The end of human history. The world turned into a cruel game for everyone. Some were given a chance for triumph, while others are now only allowed to entertain the gods. Chen Bai belonged to the second type of people. In the castle of the White Demon, he stood below and looked at his mistress who was floating in the air and said that the guy did not live up to her hopes. Raising her hand, she said that his defeat in this mission upset her, so she no longer needed him. Looking at this in surprise, Chen Bai asked his mistress to stop and give him a second chance because he had done a lot for her. She said that such a pathetic person like him has no right to ask for a second chance, and now, together with this castle, he will be swallowed up by hopeless darkness. After these words, she activated her abilities and the castle began to collapse and be swallowed up by darkness, which also enveloped the guy who stubbornly resisted. However, these forces were not enough. He began to fall into the abyss with the thought that he had completed more than 100 missions for this lady, but she erased him for just one mistake. Or perhaps she treats him this way only because he is just a pathetic person in her opinion. His body was torn into pieces and finally, with the thought that he could not accept such an end to his fate. There was almost nothing left of his body. However, instead of being sad, he just laughed. Raising his middle finger up, he looked into her eyes and wished her death. However, the lady did not even pay attention to these insults and simply pressed him with her foot, plunging him into the abyss. Finding himself underwater at a depth, he realized that now he was surrounded only by pitch darkness. Chen Bai had already fully prepared for his death. However, suddenly the artifact on his chest began to shine. The last grain of sand from the hourglass fell to the bottom and a rollback occurred. Chen Bai suddenly exploded, shouting that he hated this bitch. However, when he came to his senses, he looked back in surprise and noticed that he was in the dormitory. He did not understand what was happening and why he did not die, because the years of training that he had spent could not turn out to be an ordinary dream for him. After that, I remembered about my artifact and looked down. This hourglass fell into his hands 20 years ago when his journey began. It was the rarest item that he had encountered, and it did not show any characteristics, and it was also impossible to destroy. Therefore, he always carried it with him. The sand was always at the bottom. Even if he turned this watch over, but now it is falling. And this can only mean that the artifact turns back time. Opening his smartphone, he decided to check how far he had come back, and was surprised to find that it was now June 5th, 2032, which is exactly 10 days before he receives the universal task and begins his journey. Looking up, he remembered that after 10 days, he would receive a universal task and begin his journey. And at the same time, more than 90% of the planet's population will die. The dead will turn into zombies and other evil spirits. Modern weapons will not cope, and the tragedy will happen in just one night. However, along with the widespread extermination of humanity, some will awaken supernatural abilities, and many magical objects will be scattered throughout the world. Some of them, by the way, personally belong to one of the gods of the new universe. However, the gods cannot directly influence the world, so those who complete the tasks will be able to gain some goodies from them. Chen Bai recalled that in his past life, due to his weakness, he was able to get under the protection of Erlos with great difficulty. He carried out any of her instructions just to get the opportunity to improve his situation. But he could not even think that one failed mission would completely destroy all his works. Having opened the news, he learned that people already know about some experiments and that some people become zombies. Looking forward with confidence and standing firmly on his feet, Chen Bai decided that this time he must become stronger so as not to rely on the gods. And also this time, he would crush any of the gods, and especially his past patroness. Putting on his mask, he headed to the hospital with the thought that 10 years after the incident, someone had found the reason for pumping up abilities. And if before the disaster a person could provoke the appearance of his abilities, then they could be pumped up in the future. Entering the clinic, he thought that in his past life he had resistance to E-rank viruses. So using this method, he needs to infect himself with viruses to upgrade his ability. Standing around one of the corners, he began to overhear a conversation about doctors who said that there was no precedent for the appearance of such strange symptoms. And the nurse explained to the doctor that it felt as if their patient had escaped from the movies. And indeed, this patient Zero was the first zombie who was now enraged because he wanted to eat someone's flesh. Chen Bai sneaked into his room and looked at it and discovered that it was indeed a zombie. After that, he took out a syringe and took some of his blood, saying that zombie should not be offended because he would have to use his genes for his pumping. Having filled the syringe, Chen Bai looked at it and thought that this should be enough to awaken the ability. Looking around, he thought that there was no one here, but the staff should always stay overnight. Bai picked up the syringe and thought that if his theory was wrong, then he would simply die here. However, he no longer cared about it, and he stuck the syringe into his vein with all his might, with the thought that after a decade in stagnation, he had at least some chance of progress, and he was not going to let it slip through his hands. The virus immediately began to spread throughout his body, and he thought with incredible pain that if he were low-ranking again, he would definitely lose everything. Therefore, it was better to die now than to live another life as a weakling. With all sorts of thoughts, his legs gave way and he fell onto the cold floor, involuntarily screaming. Everything turned black in his eyes, but when he rubbed them, he discovered that he was standing in some strange dimension, and opposite him stood Erlos, who killed him in a past life. The goddess extended her hands and ordered him not to resist and to accept the darkness into himself in order to become part of the darkness, because this is the only option that is suitable for such a pathetic person. Rising to his knees, he said her name, and then, with his virus-stricken eyes, he looked straight at her and shouted that he would definitely destroy her and would not give up. Finally, morning came, and Bai realized that it was just a dream. His mind was foggy and he went out onto the balcony to enjoy the rays of the sun. After that, the door suddenly opened and he immediately turned around at this sound. His eyes were white like those of a corpse, and his whole body was inflated with blue veins. Those who entered immediately screamed in fear. Bai of ours slowly approached them and they asked, "What happened here?" Suddenly, our hero's vision returned and he recognized these people. Hunched over, he silently looked at them. And then he was glad that they had returned, but blood gushed from his eyes, nose, and mouth. Bai noticed this and said that he needed to go wash, leaving his acquaintances bewildered. Going into the toilet, he looked at himself in the mirror and was glad that it worked and the zombie virus did not kill him. He immediately wondered how much the level of his abilities would increase after awakening. However, he immediately heard a heavy voice that seemed not to belong to any living creature. This voice congratulated our hero on receiving the status of a pioneer, and on waking up earlier, looking back, he realized that it was the voice of the universe. After that, he was glad that he had awakened so early and immediately revealed his characteristics. He read that now his status is pioneer, and also read that only a person who was able to awaken his abilities before the start of the blessing can receive this status. Now all his characteristics are raised by 5%, the amount of experience gained by as much as 10%, and all other characteristics to him will be assigned before the main awakening. With happy eyes, he thought that the stats panel was now available to him. Not noticing that he was now incredibly strong, he accidentally crushed the rim of the shell he was leaning on, after which he looked at his second status and discovered that he had been given the divine status of Virus King. Having accepted it, the hero's aura immediately changed and became terribly overwhelming. The King of Viruses is the most powerful ability of the virus class. With its help, you can absorb, genetically modify, and also create your own viruses. Now Bai can only absorb viruses, and then she is at a very close range, and he needs more viruses to quickly reveal his ability, and the hospital is the best place to find pathogens. Now he headed to one of the local clinics. However, he noticed that people were running out of it and were being chased by zombies. One of the guys shouted for Bai to run away too because there are zombies here and this is the real end of the world. Bai looked at this in surprise. However, he immediately remembered that in his past life in this city, after waking up, he heard that 3 strange incidents happened, and one of them was a closed hospital. Relieved that he had arrived correctly, he pounced on these zombies and, saying that he had arrived on time, tried to grab one of them. He succeeded and grabbed one of the zombies right by the head. He used his ability to absorb viruses, which gives 1 point of pumping the virus to strengthen. After that, he stood up and looked at the other zombies who were running towards him and shouted that today, no one will escape their fate. Meanwhile, in the toilet on the 4th floor, there was one guy, in the stall into which zombies were breaking. He thought that this was the end because the door could no longer withstand their onslaught, and also that he has nowhere to run and he will have to die here. It was the doctor who looked back at the nurse. The nurse, with tears in her eyes, asked the doctor, what should they do now? Suddenly, the doctor's face began to change and the nurse asked what was happening to him. He pounced on her with a crazy smile, shouting that he had been running after her for a very long time and she always refused, and if they were lying soon anyway, then he wanted to enjoy the widow in her. The girl covered herself from him with her hand and asked, has he gone crazy to talk such nonsense? However, in the meantime, one of the zombies broke through the door to the toilet stall. The doctor looked at him in fright and shouted that he didn't want to die. After that, he grabbed the nurse's hand, and he put it in front of him, protecting himself from zombies, saying that he had to survive. Leaving the girl near the zombie, he looked out the window with the thought that this was only the fourth floor. After that, he jumped out, breaking the glass with his body. However, he ran into broken glass from below and died. A couple of minutes later, Chen-bai had already destroyed and absorbed all the viruses from the zombies, and then went to the toilet stall and found a girl there who had also just been infected. He was delighted when he realized that she had just been bitten. He used absorption to touch her forehead, and then, looking around, he realized that the military would soon detach this place, and therefore, he needed someone who knew the hospital. Squatting down, he decided to try to absorb all the virus from her body in order to keep her alive and not turn her into a zombie. Surprisingly, after a couple of minutes, he succeeded, and the woman regained consciousness. She stood up in surprise and looked around, and our guy was glad that it worked. Then the nurse understood the whole situation and, looking at our hero, thanked him. Chen-bai took her hand with the words that it seemed that she had not completely lost her mind. To which the nurse replied that she remembered perfectly well what happened. Chen-bai was silent for a while and said that in that case he would need her help. The girl was embarrassed and covered herself and said that she agreed, but she needed to change clothes. But Chen-bai took her hand again and began to run, saying that there was no time for this, so she just had to take him to where they kept all the viruses. She took him to the laboratory and said that all the hospital's viruses were stored here, but samples from patients were a little to the left. Chen-bai picked up all these test tubes and said that this should be enough. After that, he began to pour all the contents from the test tubes into one container, and the nurse, looking at this in surprise, asked what he was up to. However, Chen-bai did not answer anything, and when he finished absorbing all these viruses, he was happy because serious illnesses were scored with many points. Also a strange fact about the main character, he now has HIV and herpes. When he finished absorbing all these viruses, he decided that next he needed to strengthen the zombie virus with the help of all these viruses. Having opened the tree of viruses, he decided that the most opportune moment to pump up his powers was right now. After that, he strengthened his virus, and now the zombie virus has evolved into a virus of light and darkness. All characteristics increase by 10 points. The ability to self-heal is also enhanced by 200%. And Chen-bai has successfully acquired the core of the virus for its further development. Closing his eyes, Chen-bai thought about the fact that the virus of light and darkness was created to be absorbed and evolved. An unexpected woman approached him and said that the zombie was already at the door. Chen-bai asked her to stand here and not move. After that, with one jerk, in an instant, I got as close as possible to him and grabbed his head. Chen-bai thought that this zombie is quite fast and probably weighs about 75 kilograms. But now this is not a problem. Looking into his eyes, Chen-bai said that this is a good opportunity to test his abilities on this patient. After that, he activated his ability and the zombie's body began to be absorbed. This is called evolutionary absorption. His body slowly but surely absorbed this zombie. Chen-bai began to warm up and think that this was not bad because he quickly absorbed this zombie, and his stamina was restored a little. The nurse looked at all this with frightened eyes, and Chen-bai walked up to her and asked, "Is there something wrong?" The nurse sighed heavily and then looked up at him. She stated that Chen-bai would save her, so if he did not touch her in the future, she would not reveal his secret. Chen-bai smiled sweetly and introduced himself by his name, and the nurse said that her name was Su-shin. Immediately after this, they heard the sounds of heavy footsteps. Chen-bai thought about it and said that the military police are probably already here, and they must unhook the building and kill all the zombies, so they need to leave quickly. Running out into the corridor of the hospital, Chen-bai said that she should take him to the roof and there they could escape. The nurse, meanwhile, asked why they couldn't go out directly. After all, they would not become zombies. Chen-bai shouted that they did not have time to be captured. And then, looking up, he discovered that now one of the strong zombies was standing in front of them and said that this was bad. He threw the nurse away from him and rushed at this huge zombie. In one swift move, zombie wounded this guy. After that, Chen-bai moved back a little. And I thought that everything remained much more interesting because he did not expect that there would be a mutant here. Looking at him with crazy eyes, Chen-bai began to think about how the branch of the virus of darkness and light would develop if it absorbed this mutant. While he was thinking about this, the mutant rose into the air and prepared to jump on our hero. However, Chen-bai dodged it with one deft movement. Then, in the air, he delivered a strong blow directly to the back of this mutant. The mutant immediately turned around and threw this guy away. Chen-bai flew to another zombie and immediately absorbed his power, saying that most likely they are now on equal terms with mutants. After that, he suddenly exploded and swung his hand and struck straight into the solar plexus of this mutant. After this, Chen-bai thought that the mutant was quite strong. Running back, Chen Bai saw that the mutant had fallen, but he immediately got up. Chen Bai used the treatment and said that this mutant did not feel any effect from his attack. Therefore, he will have to deal with him for a very long time. Meanwhile, the nurse smashed the fire stand with her elbow, and taking the axe in her hands, she shouted that she wanted to help. Chen Bai looked at her and the girl swung her hand and threw an axe at him. Catching it with his hand, he said that he was glad that the nurse was not made of wood. After that, he pushed off from the mutants and rose into the air, saying that he needed to do this quickly. With one blow, he cut this mutant, after which they entered into a fierce battle. The mutant and Chen Bai were already quite tired, and they both knelt down. However, Chen Bai used recovery and said that it was surprising that this mutant was still standing. After Chen Bai had fully recovered, he slowly walked up to him and placed his boot on his head. However, the mutant seemed to get a second wind, and in one movement pressed the hero to the wall. Because of such a strong blow, he even vomited blood. The nurse looked at this excitedly and involuntarily shouted. Looking down, he saw that the mutant had stuck its claws into his stomach to tear it into two parts. Chen Bai thought that he was now on his deathbed. After that, he looked into the eyes of the monster and asked him for years, has he wanted to tear him apart? The mutant began to make efforts to tear him apart. However, tentacles burst out of the hero's body, which immediately began to absorb the mutant's hands. After that, Chen Bai spread his arms and said that the mutant was no match for him. The nurse raised her gaze and no longer understood what was happening in front of her. However, with a distant look, she said that this guy was clearly doing well. Having completed the absorption, Chen Bai sank to the ground, and a notification appeared in front of him that the absorption had been completed and that he had been absorbed by a zombie with claws at the second stage of evolution. He also received a notification that the virus of light, and now the owner, has received the ability of claws. Chen Bai happily thought that he was able to absorb this monster and also mutate it even stronger. After that, he looked at his new ability and said that he made the right choice when he injected himself with a syringe with the zombie virus. But suddenly, a crowd of military men appeared in the corridor and shouted that there were survivors here. They ordered our heroes to raise their hands. Chen Bai and the nurse looked at them in surprise, and meanwhile the military said that they would count to 3. Chen Bai picked up the nurse and said that it was probably time for them to go. After that, he began to run away and the military opened fire on him to kill. The bullets hit our hero's body and the nurse, hiding behind them, said that there would be an exit to the roof to the right. After that, she noticed that bullets were hitting the guy and began to worry. To which he replied that he knew about it. So if now, it's better not to move and just be silent. Having reached the roof, he kicked down the door. Then he looked at the nurse and asked where she lived. And she was surprised to tell her address. As soon as she said this, Chen Bai pushed off from the roof of the hospital. And holding the nurse close to him, he headed at full speed towards her house. A couple of minutes later, they reached the 4th northern longitudinal street of the city. After that, they entered the girl's apartment and she said that the bathtub is on the left side, and they can go there so she can help him bandage the glads. To which Chen Bai replied that the bullets had already come out and the wounds had healed, so everything was fine. He began to take off his jacket, and the nurse with a concerned voice said that she needed to look. The guy smiled and said that it would be as she wanted. He completely took off his outer clothing, and the nurse looked at his body and found one mark on his arm. Looking at his body, she blushed and said that his chest and abs had not yet fully healed. Chen Bai honored his head and said that if he eats it, he will immediately recover. After that, he looked into her eyes and asked if she would sacrifice her body. The girl looked away embarrassedly and said that he definitely wouldn't eat her. After all, if he wanted it, he would have done it a long time ago. Chen Bai came close to her and said that she was wrong because he was lying in a suitable setting for this occasion. After that, he tore the agency off her and said that now he was happy with everything. The girl turned away so as not to look him in the eye and suggested that he eat first before dinner. He said that he would do so and immediately kissed her on the lips. After that, they headed to the shower together and continued their work there. In the room outside, meanwhile, was his phone, which was ringing endlessly with notifications. His friends tried to find out where Chen Bai is now, because according to rumors, he ran away to the hospital. The next morning, Chen Bai went to the store and completely stocked up, after which he went outside. Strange events began to occur in this city long before the Great Awakening. You can remember the incidents in the hospital, the bombing of the area, as well as the massacre with monsters. Remembering all this, Chen Bai thought that he knew little about these events, although there is practically no information about what happened before awakening. And even ordinary people do not pay any attention to this and only sometimes discuss it in dialogues. Chen Bai called the nurse and said that he had bought food for tomorrow, so he would come soon. She told him on the phone that two strange people had just come and said that they wanted to see him. The girl looked through the door peephole and said that this is quite strange because they say that the queen of the city, named Song Zikyong, wants to see the guy. The nurse quietly asked what she should do, to which Chen Bai replied that they were not lying, and they needed to wait outside until he arrived. Having opened his chat with Song Ge, he thought that Song Zikyong was her mother. Opening their dialogue, he saw many messages from her and thought about what the girl would give for her mother and decided to use it to achieve him. After that, he looked forward with thoughts that he definitely needed to visit this girl. Returning to the nurse's house, he talked to these people, and they put him in a car to take him to the district cold storage warehouse, Skin Zikyong, escaped from rags to riches, succeeding both in law and in illegal activities. After awakening, she will gain the ability of A rank, which will allow her to quickly gain power. Meanwhile, Chen Bai had already arrived and was taken to this woman, while he was thinking about the fact that she eventually won the three-way competition, thereby gaining the true status of a queen. And in his previous life, Chen Bai could only rely on her. However, now Chen Bai thought that everything was completely different, and if he could win her over to his side, he could do a lot more before awakening. The guards took the guy to this woman and said that the gentleman had arrived. The queen said that she was sorry that she made him come here, but she had no other choice. Chen Bai looked at her and asked why she needed him. The woman approached the young man and began straightening his clothes, saying that her daughter had told him that the guy had disappeared in the hospital, so she turned to her mother for help. And the woman agreed to help, so she called the guy here to find out what kind of guy was making her daughter worry so much and what attracted her so much to him. Chen Bai briefly answered that he does not like to beat around the bush and asked why he came here after all. The woman straightened her hair and said that he was quite stubborn, although she also did not like to twist. After that, she threw up her hands and said that she wants him to belong to her. And if he loves her daughter, then becoming a son-in-law will not be a problem in the future. Chen Bai looked at all this and said that he did not think that this was the reason to lure him to himself. The woman immediately turned to him and said that having seen his truly legal act in the hospital, anyone would want to have such abilities. Chen Bai immediately realized that she knew what had just happened. He tensed up a little and stated that he remembers exactly how he destroyed all power sources, so there was no way she could find and recognize him so quickly. The woman led him inside the building and then into the elevator, pressing on one of the floors, and told him that he should not underestimate her in any case, as long as he was between the dining room and the observation room and her people could watch him. The woman turned and showed her phone and said that, fortunately in this hospital, she had a couple of these. After that, she turned on her smartphone and showed that someone had filmed how Chen Bai dealt with mutants and zombies. The woman said that she was very lucky, and among the survivors who were taken out of the isolation zone, she found a man who was well acquainted with the nurse named Liu Feng. Chen Bai immediately remembered last night at the nurse's house. After making love, they began to discuss all sorts of things, and Chen Bai asked if there was a guy whose name was Liu Feng. The nurse said that it was so, and this was the doctor. He asked how this freak was trying to abuse her and also push her to be eaten by zombies on. That the woman replied that as soon as this doctor pushed her, he immediately tried to go out the window. We grabbed him with a zombie, and so he flew headfirst into the window and then stopped moving. Chen Bai then said that he thought that the person who was hanging on the window was frozen. The nurse said that it would be better if he really turned out to be dead, to which Chen Bai agreed. After that, the girl looked at the hero and said that she felt very good now, so she wanted to continue, to which Chen Bai replied that he didn't think that for her first time she would scream so much, but asked her not to worry because they still have a lot of head time and they will do everything in time. After these words, the nurse climbed on him with the words that she was obliged to please her savior. Finally, he arrived, and Chen Bai asked this woman where the isolated survivors were, to which the woman immediately replied that if he became her property, she would tell everything. Chen Bai replied that women do not value him at all, to which she said that this is true because she knows very little about him, so she cannot determine the level of his abilities. However, Chen Bai said that he was not talking about this and the queen simply did not understand him at all. After all, if she understood, she would not have suggested such things. After that, he activated his claws and said that in fact he wants her to be his. Looking at this, the woman asked in surprise, "Is this a mutation of the zombie virus?" And the security guard immediately covered her mistress. Chen Bai ran his claws along the iron and cut it, saying that it was not a zombie virus. After that, he waved his hand and said that if she became his property, he would show her everything. The woman with a smile asked not to underestimate her, because these claws are clearly not enough to defeat her. And besides, he already has a young nurse, so she doesn't understand. Why does he need such a MILF? Chen Bai approached her and ran his hand over her face, saying that no one could resist such a lady. After all, everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses. But before the global apocalypse, only this woman can help him more than that nurse. The queen of the city watched into his eyes and asked, "Will the apocalypse really happen just because of a few zombies?" Chenbai laughed and let the woman go, saying that the zombie is just a seed. After this, the woman said that apparently Chenbai knows a lot, to which he replied that it is many times more than she can imagine. After that, the woman extended her hand and said that they were not one of those who were ready to bend right away. So it was better for them to unite, and she was ready to give her resources for his knowledge. Chenbai shook her hand, saying that these were quite favorable conditions, and he also added that he knew that the queen would not be easy to defeat. The woman came closer to him and said that right now she was looking into the eyes of a man who could resist her, so she expected him to try. However, unexpectedly, their sweet conversation was interrupted by the sounds of gunfire. Everyone immediately turned around and asked what was happening. The queen of the city said that last night the commander-in-chief of the city sent the commander to negotiate with her, and they privatized part of the warehouses to contain living zombies and people rescued from the hospital. She immediately said that the shooting happened on their side, so she doesn't understand what could have gone wrong because there are about 30 barely moving zombies there, and they are guarded by a whole half of the company. Chenbai thought about it, because he didn't expect the others to know so quickly that zombies slow down at low temperatures. But he realized that they definitely didn't realize that in extreme situations, the chance of mutation in zombies increases. Remembering events from the future, he thought that if a mutation occurs in the refrigerator, then perhaps the area will be bombed. Chenbei said that they need to go and check everything. While inside, he was thinking about what kind of mutation was waiting for him there. Meanwhile, the military tried to contain the zombies that had mutated. They tried to blow him up, but he didn't care. It consisted of 30 other zombies. And, breaking out of the cage, grabbed one of the soldiers, killing the rest with it. The commander began to radio over that their weapons were useless. Therefore, they needed to split up into small groups and try to distract this monster because they needed to hold out until reinforcements arrived. Suddenly, the queen of the city appeared and ordered the commander to retreat and cease fire. He looked at her in surprise and asked what she was doing here. The woman said that they could not hold back this mountain of meat, so they needed to retreat to avoid even greater losses. She also said that he should order the rest of the warehouse workers and survivors from the hospital to be taken out of here, to which the commander immediately replied that this was impossible, because the monster was very fast and no one would be able to escape without its containment. One of the workers named Lu Li was too close to the mutant and was already preparing for her death. And the queen, looking at this, said that, as she had already said, the commander should not be afraid of this monster because they have bigger fish on their side. After these words, Chenbai suddenly appeared and stopped the blow of this monster with his claws. Looking at his palm, he thought that, as usual, he almost twisted his hand. After that, he looked at the mutant and was surprised at how big he was, realizing that brute force alone could not do it. After that, he rushed to attack this monster, destroying one of its arms. However, the monsters did not even seem to notice the damage from this attack. And a second later, he slammed our hero into the wall of the building. The commander looked at Chenbai fighting the monster and asked the woman if she was really conducting experiments on genetically modifying people, to which the woman replied that in front of them was an ordinary person who was her partner. Chenbai, meanwhile, found himself in the refrigerator and stood on a pile of meat, saying that zombies should not eat this food. After that, he used the absorption of this meat and said that it would be a waste on him. When he finished absorbing, he jumped up. Finding himself above this monster, the system immediately told him that a large amount of raw beef had been absorbed. So the virus of darkness and light had mutated, and strength and endurance increased. Chenbai was surprised at how good the premium meat was because he not only regained his strength but also increased his level. Having hit this monster, he realized that the mutant was trying to restore his strength because he was already completely exhausted. While he was in his refrigerator, taking advantage of the right moment, Chenbai waved his hands and shouted that the death of this mutant had come. After that, he slammed into his head at great speed with all his might, causing critical damage. He began tearing his head with his claws. The mutant was in great pain and tried to stop it with his own hands. However, Chenbai used absorption. The commander looked at all this with the words that this was simply impossible and such people did not exist. And Chenbai completely enveloped the body of this monster with his tentacles and began to use absorption. The commander continued to look at all this and said that a person was simply not capable of this. After that, he took out his walkie-talkie and said that it's great because now they are both immobilized. The man raised the radio and demanded that reinforcements urgently bombard the following coordinates. However, The queen of the city approached him, and while he had not yet said the coordinates, she asked him to be calmer and once again think about everything carefully because this guy is now saving them all. She looked into the commander's eyes and asked him not to do anything stupid, otherwise it would end very sadly for everyone. After 10 minutes, Chen Bai finally finished absorbing this huge monster. Meanwhile, support arrived and completely surrounded him. The commander ordered everyone to reload their weapons and prepare to fire. The woman immediately reminded that she had promised something. This was a cat. And the commander said that he remembered very well that until this guy starts letting go of his hands, he cannot give such an order. Chen Bai, meanwhile, continued to mutate, and a message from the system appeared in front of him, which said that the first absorption of the mountain of meat had mutated the virus and acquired an entry-level enhancement for 500 development points, and also unlocked a new talent of the king of viruses called infection. The system also said that the absorption of zombies the size of a meat mountain led to the mutation and strengthening of the darkness and light virus. So now he was unlocked young. Chen Bai immediately used his claws to test his new speed strength, and his second hand now resembled a huge hammer. Chen Bai realized that he had just really mutated greatly, and he also feels that the young man has incredible strength, but he cannot test it now, unfortunately. After that, he regained his hands and said that this was his biggest catch of the day. Taking out the core of a mountain of meat from his pocket, he began to unravel it. He thought that this core is very rare and can be used to create equipment. And if you find a way to control it, you can build walls of flesh and blood that will expand limitlessly. After that, he thought about the fact that he could feed this core to one of the soldiers in order to test the walls in action and then kill the soldier and take this core back. However, he decided not to do this and simply hid the core while the woman began to approach him. Along with her was Lu Li, whom Chen Bai had recently saved. Looking at her, Chen Bai said that he knows her because she's a fairly well-known journalist, and she is very popular online. After looking at her, he asked, "Are the photographs from the hospital really her work?" The girl immediately began to nod her head and say that she was very grateful to him for saving her twice already. Chen Bai approached her and asked if she had any records of where he dealt with the mutant in the hospital. To which the woman replied that due to occupational deformation she could have already deleted them. Chen Bai nodded and said that she should not send them to anyone because he has great use for these records. After that, one of the military men approached the guy and said that Mr. Chen Bai should come to the commander and tell him everything he knows about himself and the current situation. Chen Bai looked at him and remembered that Commander Huang is a name that cannot be forgotten, because after the tests, the weak awakened ones were placed in cages and treated as unwanted. And this commander, at first, drowned in his justice and then simply began to mock people, and Chen Bai was one of them and constantly worked even without the opportunity to have a proper snack. Well, the funny thing is that for trying to escape, he calls the person a traitor to the motherland and mercilessly deals with him. Therefore, Chen Bai at one point decided to try his luck and leave the city. Chen Bai looked at the queen and asked if he should go to this man, to which the woman replied that of course not, because they cannot know how it will turn out. After that, she looked at him again and said that she would deal with this commander herself. The man, meanwhile, said that he hoped that they understood the full degree of responsibility facing the citizens of this country. The woman looked at him menacingly and sent him to hell, asking who he was to speak to her in such a tone, because he himself had not yet grown to become a commander. After which, she advised him to go and tell this master of his to come to them himself if he needs it so much. The man wanted to answer something, but another military man immediately approached him and said that a riot had broken out in the zone for isolated people. Chen Bai, looking at them, smiled and asked if by any chance there was a doctor named Liu there. The commander looked back in fear and said that he didn't know. And the second military man added that there was this man there, and he was the most violent among them. Chen Bai smiled lightly and said that he needed to meet this doctor in person. The commander gave the order to take our hero to this doctor. After that, they walked away a little, and finally the doctor was taken out into the street. He asked who was looking for him, and then asked, did his father finally call them and now doesn't know that he is of high blood? The doctor said that his father is Liu Huainong, and he is the deputy head physician of the hospital. Chen Bai approached him and, taking him by the shoulder, used the zombie virus infection. After that, he looked into his eyes and said that he was looking for this doctor, saying that he needed to endure a few questions. Chen Bai looked into his eyes and said that yesterday he spoke with this nurse, and because he abandoned her and turned her into a zombie, she wants this person to die as soon as possible. The doctor looked in surprise at the guy in front of him and said that she should not be alive. After that, Chen Bai immediately went to him and ordered everyone else to also keep their distance because this young man is now mutating into a zombie. The doctor looked at everyone around in surprise and said that he was trying to deceive everyone and would soon become a zombie himself. However, immediately after this, his body changed and he attacked our hero. But Chen Bai used his new skill called a hammer and knocked him away, finishing him off with one blow. Looking at his hand, he thought that this was quite good, because the hammer was stronger and exceeded all expectations. The squad leader, meanwhile, did not understand who was standing in front of him, a man or a monster. Chen Bai looked at the queen and said that he will report everything to her when he ends here. The woman slowly approached him and said that now he could just call her son. Looking at the woman, he asked why, and she took his hand and said that it was because their partnership was simply unprofitable in the current situation. She pressed herself slightly against him and said that she was ready to become his woman. Chen Bai smiled and said that now everything depends only on her. When they finished sorting out the paperwork, they all got into the car together. A journalist and a security guard were sitting in front and driving, and Chen Bai and Song were sitting in the back. The queen of the city looked at the guy and said that it was the right time to invite him to dinner. Chen Bai looked at her and briefly asked her not to disturb him until they reached her house. The woman said that she would do as he asked her. Chen Bai, meanwhile, was thinking that perhaps he had received at least something worthwhile for defeating that local mutant. After that, he began to open the rewards and was surprised because he was given 2 whole skill books. The first of them looked rather useless. It was called Bloodthirstiness and gave +3 points to all characteristics for 10 minutes. And its cooldown lasted for a whole day, during which the stats decreased exactly twice. Looking at all this, Chen Bai thought that this skill was unlikely will he ever need it. He discovered the second skill, and it was Skin People, which doubles the amount of muscle mass in the body, giving an increase in strength. He thought that this skill was also the same because he once met a person with such a skill, and his strength was enormous. But in terms of agility, he was like cows on ice. Chen Bai looked down and thought that although these skills are useless for him, at this stage they will be useful to him sooner or later. Therefore, he should think about allies. After that, he decided that he now needed to collect more power and saw that 6 gold coins fell from the mutants, which was enough to create the first chat. He created a chat and found out that you can even immediately invite people there so that they have time to prepare before waking up. And after waking up, it will be problematic to find people. Therefore, it is better to get in touch with them now. A notification appeared in front of him that he must enter a name for the chat. And if he uses this method, then it will be selected automatically. He cancelled this action, and the chat was given the name Idura1, after which he remembered the goddess who killed him and thought that he would definitely build his white palace, calling it God's land and making her his lousy slave. They finally reached the Sum family residence, and within 3 hours, Chen Bai told part of what he knew. Having finished, he said that for now this is all he can tell her, and he believes that this will be enough to gain an advantage later. The woman looked at him and said that unfortunately this would not be enough. She looked at the guy and said that she wanted to get straight to the point because he was doing all this so that she would eventually work for him. Chen Bai raised his hand and said that firstly, this is all for the sake of strength and capabilities, and secondly, for the sake of honesty, because a beloved dog must be faithful to its owner. The woman said that she was not sure about her fidelity. However, after that she smiled and said that when it comes to strength, she is ideal because her power, wealth, and status are at the highest level in this city. Chen Bai looked at her and laughed and said that after awakening, values and attitudes will be completely different, and everything that she had will be destroyed and she will be made a slave. Looking at him, the woman asked, what is the difference between a tame dog and people who have become toys in his hands? Chen Bai immediately said that the dogs were ordered to do everything to realize their capabilities without the direct intervention of the owner, and therefore he, as he was stronger than her, will remain so. The woman straightened her hair and asked, is it possible that if she doubts him, she will definitely lose such a wonderful opportunity? Chen Bai said that it would be so, after which she was silent for several seconds. Immediately after this, she dropped to one knee, saying that she swears eternal loyalty to her master. Looking at this, Chen Bai said that her status and capabilities have suddenly become more useful, and this is very interesting. After that, he took her chin and moved her face closer to him, saying that he wanted to look at her beauty, but they still needed to discuss something. After this, the lady sent 2 instructions to her subordinates and ordered them to find a person who would constantly post content on the forum with their hero on the topic of Pioneer. And the journalist should also send them a video with him. The security guard approached the journalist and said that she should send her the video and go home. The woman looked at the security guard and asked in surprise, "Do they really not need her help anymore?" To which the second woman replied, "Wait, 2 days were very difficult, so I returned home and restored my strength." The woman took her phone and said that she would do so, and also said that today she was almost eaten alive, so she was not as tense as when she first met the walkers. And perhaps this is because on a subconscious level, she had already come to terms with the possibility of death from zombie hands. Or perhaps she was simply inspired and calmed by the strength of that guy. Sun's phone rang and it said that her daughter was calling. Chenbai picked up the phone and greeted her. The girl didn't understand who was talking to her and asked her mother why she needed to return home. Did something really happen there? Chenbai introduced himself and she immediately started asking, why did he have her mom's phone number and what did he do to her? Chenbai looked down and said that her mother did not have time to talk to her now. He smiled, telling her to quickly return home because there was one important matter. The girl said that she would do as he asked. However, she added that he would have to answer for all her sent messages that he did not read. However, while she was saying this, he hung up, and she began to get angry because this idiot was behaving this way and thought that sooner or later she would make him bow to her. Mrs. Song, meanwhile, was between the guy's knees and asked him if he could protect her daughter too, to which he replied that she was very weak and also very spoiled. After that, he looked at the woman and said that if she tried, he would definitely not allow her to turn into a monster after waking up. Mrs. Song blushed and said that she thanked her master. The next day, the woman met with her daughter, and they headed to the secret warehouse. The girl said that her mother should not allow this guy to deceive her. Moreover, to do such indecent things to her is completely out of bounds. The woman folded her hands on her chest and said that this is why she forbade her daughter to look for this guy yesterday. Because as soon as they get out of this transport, she will just have to be silent and watch him. Chenbai, meanwhile, stood with Lady Song's guard, who said that last night she checked all the rumors about places where there could be zombies and in the end found only this building. The girl said that it used to be an underground casino until its owners and players turned into monsters. And now, there are about 160 people there, but no special individuals like a meat mutant have been discovered. Chenbai said that he understood everything and began to remember what happened in this place in his future, but he understood that he most likely would not remember because he had never been in this wilderness. Looking at the girl, he asked her again, did she go around all the places and they all led her to this place? Looking ahead, Chenbai realized that perhaps this was the same zombie farm, and it seemed like someone was collecting them here in one place. He thought about it in surprise. Because the military only dared to capture a couple of dozen walkers, and then it seemed they decided to collect them all. He began to talk about the fact that perhaps there was some daredevil inside, or perhaps another pioneer had done this. After that, he ordered the rest of the people to finally open the doors. The assistants opened the door to this hangar and zombies immediately ran out of it, which pounced on our hero who stood alone and rang out from them. As soon as they got too close, he fought with them. The nurse filmed all this, and the youngest Song could not believe her eyes. Having defeated them all, he used absorption and absorbed more than 160 zombies, and the system notified him that he had already killed more than 300 zombies, so he received a new title. The system said that now he is a low-class zombie killer and gets +5 to all characteristics and also +5% to damage against zombies and received another 500 zombie viroids, which allows him to exchange them in the talent tree for zombie blood serum. He thought that this was quite good because before that, even after waking up, he still had a chance to catch the zombie virus. And in the end, not all people have immunity to this disease, and he definitely needs a virus that opens up incredible physical abilities. With his thoughts, he exchanged 300 viroids for the zombie genome. After that, he waved his hand and ordered everyone else to go inside. The woman said that you remember very well what he told her, and repeated his words that killing a zombie with a bladed weapon will reduce the chance of it turning into a monster after waking up. So the main thing is to kill it with your own hands, avoiding bites. Chenbai took one of the surviving zombies and said that now he will see what they are worth. The guard pulled on her gloves and said that she would be the first. After that, he let go of the zombie and she immediately threw him over herself. This blow broke his cervical vertebrae. Chenbai said that it was clear to him what kind of girl was in front of him, thinking inside that she was fast and cruel. After that, it was Mrs. Song's turn to finish off the zombies with a steel bat. Chenbai said that of course it was not possible to kill in one blow, but in 10 it was even quite possible. The next one was a nurse who could barely cope. Chenbai noted that she is too weak to fight off zombies. However, she knows how a person works inside and somehow managed to take him down. The last was Sun's daughter, who looked at the zombie with tears in her eyes and held a bat in her hands. Her legs were shaking so badly from fear that she wet herself. After that, she started hitting herself on the head and saying that she just couldn't do it. Chen Bai looked at this and called it a complete failure. After that, he said that they should go. They went out, and he said that some people had already checked all the places where there should be zombies, but all to no avail. And that's why it's very strange, so she herself should go and check everything. After that, the woman wanted to say something about her daughter. However, Chen Bai said that he absolutely doesn't care about all this because he has neither the time nor the desire to drag this weak carcass along with him. Therefore, her training lies on other shoulders. The woman looked at his back and said that she did not have the power to clear the virus. Chen Bai immediately handed her a piece of paper and she asked what it was. Chen Bai did not answer anything and she started reading it and realized that in front of her was a zombie genome that could be an antidote. After a couple of seconds, she said that it has an incredibly complex structure. Chen Bai said that she could create her own by replacing the elements, because this is where the value of the formulas of all kinds of potions lies. The woman thanked the guy for his generosity and said that she would do everything to fulfill this order and swears that she would cherish the formula like the apple of her eye. After that, she bowed, and Chen Bai said that he had already realized that she was faithful to him. Therefore, she needed to quickly begin the task and not forget to send someone to him later. Chen Bai left here and opened his phone and saw that his message on the forum had already been read by a whole bunch of people, but he didn't even think that so many pioneers would contact him. However, most of the comments were complete cringe. But among them, there was one strange guy who said that he was also a pioneer. He added him to his chat, and the guy immediately asked if he could add other people. Chen Bai asked him in surprise what other people he was talking about, and the guy said that there was one person whose name was Mizukawa. Chen Bai immediately remembered that he knew this is the name. After all, this guy received the title of the strongest water lord of all. He immediately wrote that if this person could attract as many pioneers as possible, it would be just great. After that, he received a notification on his phone that Mizukawa had joined the chat, and Chen Bai closed the phone with a satisfied smile. Friends, I spend a lot of time and effort retelling a single manhwa. It takes several days, and my videos don't always pay off. If you like what I do and want to support me or see more of this manhwa, please use the super thank you feature. It really helps. And a huge thank you to everyone who watches the video to the end. I really appreciate it. That same day, in the evening, the journalist called the lady who asked how the investigation was progressing, to which the journalist replied that it was all due to the forces of the chief ruler of this city. After all, they collect all the zombies and send them to the warehouse along the pier. She also said that she sent her people to find out more information. So now she is waiting for them. But for some reason they do not return for a long time, so she thinks that there is no need to wait now. While she was talking about this in front of her, not from here, but two zombie corpses fell. The girl got scared, and then the guy climbed out of the window. Looking down, he waved his hand at her. She looked at him with frightened eyes and did not understand how she was discovered. The next day, Chen Bai spent Song's time quietly. One of the people wrote to him and said that he had several questions about his ability. Chen Bai asked him to send him his characteristics and saw that this guy had an SS rank. They talked a little more and Chen Bai explained everything to him. Then Mrs. Song came up to him, looking at her. He asked what happened. The woman answered in a heavy voice that the journalist had learned that the zombie was collecting everyone in a warehouse at the pier. However, her squad fell into a trap, and now they were being called for negotiations. Chen Bai began to get up and ask if they had contacted her, instead of talking to the boss. The woman understood what our hero was getting at, and immediately dropped to her knees with the words that she raised this journalist, so she doesn't think that she could convey them, and this time she was in charge of the operation, which means that the problems arose because of her subordinates. Looking at the woman, Chen Bai said that he would save the journalist, and Mrs. Song immediately understood her head and thanked the gentleman. Meanwhile, the journalist was on the pier. She was tied up, and a man named Xing Meng stood next to her. He was holding a glass of dry red wine, and said that the girl should not be so distant because he made her understand that he would not lay a finger on her, and if she surrendered right now, she would become his subordinate, and if not, it will be a toy. After that, he came closer to her and handed her a glass of wine and said that she should not give up alcohol. There was another broken glass lying on the floor, and Sin said that if she did not drink wine as a sign of respect, then another fine glass would await her. Suddenly, Chen Bai appeared, sitting peacefully at the next table and saying that the man had no manners at all because he still did not understand that the girl simply did not like wine. Sin looked at the hero and realized with horror that he had not even noticed when this man made his way here. Chen meanwhile, stood up from the table and held a fork in his hand with meat on it. He said that if the girl was hungry, she could bite him because this meat tastes nothing like that. After that, he approached her and fed the girl with the words that he would definitely return her home. Xing took a sip of wine and asked if Chen Bai was standing in front of him. The man looked down and said that Chen Bai came so close and no one even noticed him, and this means that he is also a pioneer. However, Chen Bai did not even pay attention to his words and untied her and said that the car was already waiting for them outside. Sin said with a smile that it seems that the queen of this city already belongs to our hero. Chen Bai replied that it was, after which Xing kicked the floor and asked why the queen gave up so quickly. After that, he finished his glass of wine and asked, "Does the hero really have special methods of coercion?" Xing went to the table and poured 2 glasses of wine with the words that they need to join forces because he conquered the cities and Chen Bai curbed the queen and was left to deal only with the military. After that, the man took 2 glasses of wine and approached the guy, saying that if Chen Bai helps him become the king of the city, he will give him absolutely everything he wants. However, Chen Bai immediately replied with a smile that he refused. Out of shock, Xing even dropped his glasses of wine. However, after that, he calmed down and smiled, saying that he had an S-rank talent, which is a fairly high rank. Chen Bai ran his hands through the air and said that he had seen enough around here, noticing that the guy was collecting zombies here and for some reason, he was turning people into them. After that, Chen Bai said that it was a pity that people like him were given incredible talents, but in the end, they still remain worthless. After finishing his speech, Chen Bai said that Xing is not even worthy of help because in front of him is a person of SSS rank. Sin covered his hand with protection and said that his talent is called a fighter, and he can absorb the characteristics of the people he killed for a very long time with the help of his power. After that, he stated with a smile that he had never met a person who could resist him, and our hero, having such a high rank, probably already imagined himself to be God. Chen Bai replied that he could say so, but inside he was thinking that this guy can not only absorb characteristics, but also pump them up. And this claw is the weapon with which he does this. While he was thinking about this, Sin attacked him, shouting that he would now absorb all the powers of our hero. They exchanged a couple of blows, but nothing extraordinary happened. Afterwards, Sin tore his virginity and said that initially the talent only changed his body so that it was quite enough. But he really lacked strength. Chen Bai looked at all this in surprise and did not understand why his opponent was talking about his strength. After thinking a little more, he decided that he needed to be careful because he did not know what to expect from this guy. Sin, meanwhile, swung and jumped up to finish off the hero. However, Chen Bai used his hammer and struck back. For several minutes, they continued the duel, destroying everything around. Xing at some point said that Chen Bai is a good fighter. However, it seems to him that he should be at the limit. After that, he clicked that he wanted to see SSS talent. R replied that he had already revealed his talent. Sin had not yet noticed it. Immediately after these words, Sin. After this, the man thought that Chen Bai was definitely inferior to him in strength and speed, although he tried to pretend that this was not the case. However, while he was thinking about this, his body suddenly failed him. Alerts immediately appeared in front of him that his body was affected by a strong poison, which is why he receives penalties to all characteristics, as well as debuffs, photophobia, hydrophobia, failure of thermoregulation, slow reaction, loss of strength, and a dozen more restrictions. Sin looked forward in fear and asked, "How is this even possible?" Chen Bai stood up and said that his opponent was very strong and was able to hold out for so long before being infected. After that, Chen Bai got as close to him as possible and killed this guy with one blow, piercing his body. Chen Bai looked at this man and said that he were at different levels. However, he did not understand this. After that, Chen Bai began to absorb it and say that he hoped that now he would be of some use. Xing dropped his claw, and in front of our hero a notification from the system appeared that the primary awakening of the virus of light and darkness had been completed, and the obtained characteristics had completed the formation of the basis of the king of viruses. So now the absorption skill has been strengthened, and Chen Bai can choose the path of development from memories. After reading a little more information, Chen Bai said that now the bonus to characteristics when activated has become passive, and his skill has really improved quite well. He also noticed that he now has additional characteristics and has become about 40 times stronger. After looking at his talents, he decided that he had now finally reached the basic point of leveling up. After that, he bent down to raise his claws and thought that it seemed like there was very little time left, and ordinary people with stats below 5 were already too weak for him. The hero thought that the guy he had just fought with was not bad because he planned everything. And even though he killed a lot of zombies, he would never reach the level of the king of viruses. Raising his claws, he read their characteristics and also learned that he had received a rank C blueprint called a living nightmare, which consists of a zombie claw, mountain flesh, a bombardier's bone, a traitor's heart, and the brain of the general manager. Chen Bai thought that luck was definitely on this guy's side. However, now everything does not belong to him. Going out into the street, Chen Bai thought that the day had finally come when he rose from the lowest rank to the highest, and the past 3 incidents gave him a lot of experience, and now the fate of the city and the people who depend on him are in his hands. Coming out into the street, he was met by Mrs. Song, who immediately opened the door for him. Chen Bai thought that in his current world it no longer makes sense to deal with monsters before the general awakening, and in these last days, he decided that he would only prepare to meet the new world. Returning home, Chen Bai stood in front of the window and looked at the city with the thought that the awakening would begin very soon. After that, Mrs. Song, a nurse and a journalist, came into his room and said that they had prepared for him everything he asked for. The journalist said that the topographical data and population of the area located in the center were confirmed, and within an hour after waking up, they would already have control over them. I said that time is already running out. Therefore, she is interested in finding out if our hero needs anything else? To which Chen Bai replied that he didn't need anything else, and they had done a good job, so they should leave the reports on the table and go rest. After that, he picked up his phone and went into the chat of the awakened pioneers. He immediately wrote that there are 10 minutes left before the end of the world, so he once again wants to remember that they take everything to hell at once and remain calm and do not make any risky moves. After all, he doesn't want them all to be wiped out well in 10 minutes. There were still 9 minutes left and everyone had already read these messages. After another couple of minutes, all the participants in the Pioneer chat were thinking that they were impatient. Chen Bai looked forward and said that if he were the other people, he would put everything aside now. Finally, there are only 9 seconds left until the end of the world. Chen Bai stood surrounded by his squad and said that he couldn't even believe that they were standing on the threshold of a brave new world. When there were 6 seconds left on the counter, Chen Bai said that the last day of their former life had ended. Smiling slightly, at the last second Chen Bai said that it all began. On June 15th, at the stroke of midnight, there was a great awakening. The world as everyone knew it fell. The end of the world was in full swing, and the surviving people became awakened and received unsurpassed talents and the opportunity to gain experience by upgrading their rank. After a series of awakenings, a fierce battle to the death began. Many mysterious places and crevices have formed around the world. For some it was a blessing, but for most people, it remained a curse. Looking at this new world, Chen Bai thought that all they could do was take all their strength into a fist and move forward. However, unexpectedly, the system notified him that the hourglass was now being linked to the carrier. Chen Bai looked at his artifact in surprise and was horrified. He thought that his assistants should under no circumstances find out about this artifact, so he turned around and shouted that they needed to run away. However, when he looked back, he noticed that they were all frozen in place and time had stopped, and even a falling plane froze in one place. After this, the clock began to collect energy, and a notification appeared in front of him that the binding of the watch was completed. He read the description of this item and realized that it turns out that Return to the Past allowed him to be reborn. After reading a little more, he learned that this ability has an incredibly long cooldown of years, and also that it can simply persist at a certain moment, and after the specified time it will be reborn. After that, time returned to its course again, and Mrs. Song, looking at the hero, said that it seemed to her that he had just called them. Therefore, she wants to find out how they can be useful for him. Chen Bai immediately said that they should go and check the safety of their estate because it is too dangerous at night. So as soon as the first ray of sun falls, they should be ready for defense. The girls unanimously stated that they understood the task. Having gone down with them, Chen Bai saw that almost all of the estate's workers had become zombies. Sun immediately used her new ability called the Amethyst Eye, which turns objects into amethyst used for defense and attack, increasing a person's spiritual powers. And her eyes now made it possible to obtain data about the characteristics of the target and made it possible to increase attributes. The woman became much stronger and could now kill zombies with one blow. The guard also awakened, and now she had access to the Killer Path skill, which hides any sounds and increases strength and agility in the dark, as well as the attack speed on a specific target by half. Therefore, now it was not a problem for her to immediately destroy a crowd of zombies. One of the guards entered the main hall and, holding him in his arms, said that there was another survivor here. The nurse now had the skill of recovery, which allows you to recover and restore the consequences of severe injuries in a short time. She ordered to inject this guy with an antivirus serum, and then she will deal with him when everyone else is done. A couple of hours later, Chen Bai approached the journalist and said that everything was going surprisingly very well. To which she replied that it was all thanks to his leadership, because he helped them take control of the situation. Looking outside, the girl said that nothing bad had happened yet. Chen Bai looked up and said that he would rely on them, but for now he needed to do important things. The girl smiled and said that she would do as he said. After that, Chen Bai jumped up with incredible speed. He began to write to his goal with the thought that he was very annoyed that after waking up, vehicles and communications stopped functioning. Although with his speed, he seemed to have time to do what he wanted. Chen Bai remembered that even before his rebirth, a mark hung over the university, and only after a while he was able to understand its purpose. However, it was too late, but now he definitely will not miss this chance. A night later, he finally got to the right place where he dealt with the zombies who were guarding him. Looking at this mark, he thought that in front of him now was a thing that all awakened people would like to see. After all, this was a mark indicating the place of the deity's condescension, which means that he came just in time. However, while he was running, a man suddenly stopped him. The man said that it is not often possible to see such a strong guy immediately after the awakening begins. After which the man laughed and said that he was a merchant and he had an offer that would simply be impossible to refuse. Chen Bai stopped and said with a smile that this man really interested him. And the merchant raised his hands and said that it would be an honor for him to bargain with this guy. Chen Bai spread his arms and said that he looked at this mark for days and nights, anticipating their meeting. After that, Chen Bai bowed and greeted the majority of the trade. God laughed and said that he was surprised that they recognized him. The god of trade kindly said that he immediately realized that there was some kind of connection between them, so he wanted to give a gold card of the goblin market, which gives a 12% discount. Chen Bai stretched out his hands to this card with the thought that in a past life this god could not be appeased with compliments. However, now the opposite is true, after which Chen Bai said that he was very grateful, and it turns out that the legends about the generosity of the god of trade are not such legends. The god of trade laughed and said that in this case, if Chen Bai is ready to bargain, he will provide him with his goods. Looking at the goods store, Chen Bai was surprised because God even had the legendary profession change scroll, and moreover, there was a huge number of rare items in stock. However, Chen Bai looked down and thanked him for such a generous offer, but he was afraid that he would not be able to afford it. The god of trade said that he knew that after the awakening began, almost everyone would be penniless. But all his goods are of the highest quality, so Chen Bai should work with him for a couple of days, and then they will finally be able to agree. Chen Bai was silent for a couple of seconds and said that he can't afford to buy these goods now, but he heard that the gods cannot directly influence the entrance of testing during awakening, so they sponsor the pioneers so that you can bring them profit later. God looked at this man in surprise, and Chen Bai asked if the god of trade had come here for this. God's eye changed to black and he said that Chen Bai is quite knowledgeable and then asked, does he really want his money? Chen Bai raised his hand and said, who has heard that the god of that time has incredible treasures that no one refuses with sound skills, so he invites him to invest in the king of viruses. The god of trade created a chair for himself and sat down on it with the words that the money invested in awakening is already in surplus, so God does not understand why, by the way. Chen Bai decided that he could bring him more income planned by the gods. After all, even the dumbest person had this question about the effectiveness of such spontaneous investments. Immediately after these words, Chen Bai used these skills and showed them to the god of trade, saying that this was his pledge. The god of trade immediately rose to his feet and said that he did not expect that Chen Bai had an SSS rank talent. After this, the god of trade smiled and said that there are incredibly many interesting things on this planet, and he was very surprised here. He did not expect that at least something here could bring him income. However, now it turns out that he was very much mistaken. After that, after being silent for a few seconds, the god of trade said that he would give our hero one step and asks not to let him down if he had such a high talent. God would refuse this deal, and he would have to wait for other gods. Chen Bai immediately looked at him and asked, is it really him now? The man came closer to him and said that for now he is not going to give up the scroll, because talent does not determine the future, and among the gods there is you, whose talent is even lower than A rank. So if Chen Bai wants to get maximum profit, then he must prove his power at the very in fact. After that, Chen Bai looked at God, and a notification appeared in front of him that the god of trade was offering the task of the first cycle. Chen Bai immediately accepted it. After that, the god of trade gave him a coin and said that Chen Bai would be able to summon God after completing the task simply by throwing it into the air, and he hoped that Chen Bai would not keep him waiting long. Chen Bai caught the coin with 2 fingers and asked God if he was showing him what other treasures other gods have. The god of trade laughed and immediately showed him a scroll of the second profession, which allows him to have 2 professions and simultaneously use ability skills and attribute bonuses from different professions. After that, the god of trade removed this scroll and said that they had already agreed, so it was time for him to leave. While they were saying goodbye, the god of trade waved his hand and said that he didn't think that this day would be special, so he hopes that everything will go well. When Chen Bai was left alone, he began to read the task that God left him in trade. It was of a high rank, and the conditions stated that in order to get the maximum investment from the goblins, he needs to prove that he is worthy of them. However, talent is only the first step. Therefore, you will need to give your best to the maximum. And the goal of this task is to find and defeat the creatures located on the territory of the university and collect loot from them. And the reward will be determined by God himself. Chenbai smiled because he knew that in his past life almost everyone knew about this block, and if everything was done perfectly, who would be the best reward? However, Chenbai, looking up in surprise, was surprised because he did not know that first of the apocalypse a copy of the university appeared, because he had never heard of it. Most likely it was hidden well all this time. After thinking a little, he decided not to hesitate and immediately start searching. Meanwhile, in the gym where Chenbai went, some kind of showdown was taking place. There, a group of unknown people beat their exes and said that they must become their slaves, otherwise they will be killed. However, the guys did not give up and said that they would never accept this. After this, the thug smiled and said that, in this case, they chose death. However, they don't have to worry because he will do everything very quickly. But immediately after that, he was stopped by a woman who asked Tom to stop. He immediately slapped her in the face and shouted at this slut to shut up. She was thrown several tens of meters. Everyone else looked at this in surprise. However, suddenly Chen Bai appeared at the end of the hall and asked how such a stupid monkey like this thug decided to beat up innocent students. The big man laughed and said that now he should go fuck himself with this unknown guy. However, immediately after this, Chen Bai appeared near him at great speed and struck with his claws. After that, he finished off another person and asked if there was anyone from the medical field because he was looking for something. Therefore, he needed a person with medical training. Students began to say that most likely there were no people from the medical faculty here. However, one of them suddenly remembered something and, pointing his finger at the girl who was lying on the floor after the slap, said that he definitely remembers that she is from the Faculty of Medicine. Chen Bai immediately looked into her eyes, and the girl began to beg him not to kill her because she had nothing to do with it. The girl continued to say that she just liked dragons, so she moved here to China to study, and the most beautiful dragon was one with white scales and a yellow heart. But her heart, like that, is also filled with light. They all understood what this fool was talking about and just started laughing. Meanwhile, the girl got down on her knees and began to beg to be left alive, and she would do whatever he wanted in return. Another girl appeared who said that the first one did not beat anyone, and she just got the idea before the guys, that's all. Chen Bai briefly replied that he knew about it. After that, he pointed his finger at her and said that she should stay. Others could disperse. They went outside, and Chen Bai said that when they leave here they should go to Dongshan. But they should also go around the zombie corpses that he left outside and add upon arrival that they are from our hero, and then they will be released there. People immediately began to say that they would not be able to get out of here because the school was full of regiments, and the area that Chen Bai was talking about was very far away. Chen Bai immediately said that he had already killed almost all the zombies in this area, so they can consider that they are now safe, and since they survived here, it means that they will not die in this small campaign. Chen Bai also said that he would not advise wasting time because now they have begun to develop at some unimaginable speed and there may be a second chance. One of the girls thanked our hero and said that she understood everything, so they will now quickly begin to get ready. The girl from the medical office asked if she really couldn't go with the others. And why did Chen Bai leave her here? Chen Bai did not answer anything and she immediately blushed, saying that she understood everything, and the guys from the university were simply crazy about foreign students and probably Chen Bai was also one of them. The girl immediately came closer to him and asked him not to drive her away because she was ready to do anything. Chen Bai looked into her eyes and said that she misunderstood him because he was not interested in any shortcomings, and he was looking for a person who would show him the way to medical school. The girl blushed and apologized, saying that she was so scared that she listened to almost everything. She also shouted that she was not a slut like he might have thought before. After all, everyone thinks that she is an ordinary slut, although she has never even had a boyfriend, and if Chen Bai wants, she can prove it. Chen Bai just laughed and said that you are garbage. After some time, they reached the university gym, and the girl said that she was so tired that many people were just falling off, so she wanted to take a break. To which Chen Bai replied that, of course it would be possible, but they still need to go. After that, he unscrewed her by the waist and picked her up in his arms so that he could quickly walk with her to the medical faculty. Standing on the threshold of this faculty, the girl said that Chen Bai was too impatient, and if she had not caught her clothes with her foot, she would have been naked right now. Chen Bai looked at the faculty and asked, "Is this really the faculty of medicine?" To which she replied that yes, and on the third floor there are even laboratories. One professor can enter there. And inside there are many samples and valuable information on all sorts of bacteria and viruses. They went inside, and the girl continued to talk about the fact that, moreover, on the lower floors which are underground, it was not the underground parking and garden as indicated on the plans that collapsed, but a huge waste incineration plant. And also in this faculty there is something hidden that is foreign, smooth. Most people should know. What is the administration hiding here? After that, Chen Bai said that he understood everything, and the girl took him to the chemical laboratory of the medical faculty. And looking around, Chen Bai said that he would never have thought that the medical faculty could only be useful. For this, the hero must begin to absorb her mustache out of sadness to think about what is here. But there is no need to worry too much because this is after all a university, and it would be strange to find a Siberian here. However, immediately after these words, a notification appeared in front of him that if he received a sufficient amount of the flu virus, the number of points needed to increase the level would decrease. Chen Bai immediately became happy and said that he could try it. After that, he absorbed all the remaining flu and reminder I told him that the level was successfully increased, and Chen Bai received the flu skill. After that, I read that the flu virus was released to infect people, and all attributes for the infected target will be reduced, and a negative status of sneezing will be attached. You can interrupt the level growth and reduce points. Chen Bai immediately became happy, because in fact, such a small improvement gave him even more power and continuous control. Chen Bai immediately began to think that when he was looking through this disease tree, he did not pay much attention to the viruses that exist in reality. Therefore, it seems that more time will need to be devoted to this in order to modernize antiviruses. Chen Bai remembered the merchant and thought that he still had a few pumping points left, so he felt that he still had to tinker with the god of trade, and now the best solution would be to invest their power. After that, he directly opened the skills of the black virus and pumped up the skill of flying over walls, which allows you to quickly attach to any surface, and at the same time the sense of balance will significantly increase. And he also activated combat concentration, which significantly improves vision and reaction and also doubles the ability to control all the muscles of the body. Chen Bai felt that he had better control of his body and struck one blow at the wall. And the girl from the medical university noticed with surprise that with such a light blow, she destroyed the entire wall. She almost lost consciousness from the realization that, with this blow, he didn't even touch the wall. And she's even afraid to imagine what such hands could do to such a fragile girl like her. Meanwhile, Chen Bai was thinking that it turns out that he can control all the thoughts of the body, both together and separately. But this is just one form, and besides, even if he has no strength left, he will still be able to deliver a fatal blow in this case. After that, he looked at the girl from the medical faculty and asked why she was blushing so much, to which she replied that there was nothing wrong with it. Chen Bai sighed very heavily. He said that they had to move forward about something because there was nothing more to look for here. Having gone out to the basement of the Loki Virus Institute, the girl said that there was no electricity here and she was very scared, to which Chen Bai replied that she should stand still for now he will check everything. Finally, they came to the right place and Chen Bai asked her to wait for the weapon, for which the girl said that she was very scared. Chen Bai entered this room where there was a huge red portal, and the system immediately told him that it congratulated its owner on the fact that he entered the crematoria, and the recommended level for passing is from 5 to 10. Chen Bai activated this task, and in front of him the portal disappeared, and the system said that the owner was in a special quest of the university crematorium, and successful completion of the quest will increase his level. And if the dungeon is cleared before 2 days, it will disappear from this world forever. Looking around, Chen Bai said that it's not surprising that they didn't come across anyone along the way. After that, the dead that were lying in this crematorium began to rise, and Chen Bai used his claw skill. Immediately after that, the dead people immediately stood up. They all had a lot of arms and legs, and they looked crazy. Chen Bai killed the first of them and received a whopping 400 experience points. After that, he noticed that the one sitting on the ceiling was using some kind of ability. Having fully charged it, the monster directed it at our hero, who was able to dodge it, and said that it's not surprising that they didn't attack him altogether, because it turns out that it's all about this ability, and they're just waiting for a good moment. After that, he activated his hammer skill and jumped up, saying that the movement of these monsters is still very easy to predict, so he won't have any problems dealing with them. Having destroyed this huge monster with one blow, he returned to the ground and received another 1,000 experience points, saying that not only is this spider a rare specimen, but also the reward for killing it is simply huge. And this cannot but rejoice. Looking at the rest of the monsters, he shouted with a smile that they could attack in turns and he would definitely kill each of them. After that, with crazy eyes, he continued the battle with the constantly resurrected dead. When this massacre was over, the system notified its owner that he had reached a new level, and his current level was the 4th, and he also received 2 free attribute points. Chen Bai closed. And you notifications and look into the void said that all the brothers of the last monster have therefore there is no point in hiding anymore, and so be it. He will meet this monster halfway and will not torture him. He opened the pension and saw a small monster there, but thought that it was very strange because this piece of the photo directly reeks of danger. Realizing that he was obliged to kill this monster before transformation, he immediately attacked it. But the monster especially grew in size and fought off this attack. And then he struck straight at the hero. Chen Bai stood up and said that now he was finally becoming interested. And the small bridge began to crawl out of the furnace and transform into a biochemical monster with an incredible speed of regeneration. After that, they both pounced on each other and started throwing punches. During the fight, Chen Bai shouted that since he was reborn, he had not spent even a third of his strength in any of his fights, so most likely in a few minutes his muscles. But he uses the power of this monster to restore his own. More than an hour has passed since the beginning of their battle, but they did not stop for a second. Chen Bai at one point said that he was wondering when the regeneration of this monster would finally fail. Chen Bai updated the save status, and after that he shouted that now he would check whether this huge immortal monster really was as they say about him. Another hour passed, and the monster was pretty battered, and Chen Bai laughed and said that he probably had some problems with regeneration. Another hour passed, and there was less and less of the monster left and its regeneration noticeably decreased. And Chen Bai was already relaxed and led this fight and said that the biochemical monster somehow gave up too quickly because they had just started playing with it. After that, he approached him and said that it was quite fun, but it was time to finish. And he destroyed the core of this monster by crushing it with his boot. The system immediately said that the owner had just killed a biochemical monster of the 8th level and received 10,000 experience points. And also his current level was now the 5th. And he received 2 more new attribute points, and the dungeon was successfully protected, so leave it at any time. Also, this dungeon is now completed and acquired permanent status, and the reboot time is 3 days. The system also said that if the owner wants to upload his walkthrough in the program in the dungeon, then the loot received as a result of the walkthrough will go to the one who completed the download, and the owner can also hide his face number and name, and also set the viewing price. Chen Bai raised his finger and ordered the system to download data, however, hide his face. The nurse and Madame Song were in the shelter when they suddenly received a notification from the system that the evolutionary Chen Bai had released a video of the passage of a secret dungeon called the Bloody Incinerator. Everyone who received this notification immediately opened this video and started watching how his fight went. The security guard said that she didn't understand how he could move so fast, but she had to slow down or stop the video to understand some of the details. The other pioneers said that this guy was simply amazing, and also noted that this monster's recovery ability was stronger than Bai's, so his fighting style was not suitable for this fight. However, he still won. Chen Bai, meanwhile, was absorbing this monster he had just killed, and the system notified him that the summon of a high-class mutation had just been received. Chen Bai thought that the highest. The evolution of the black virus differs from the points of other viruses. Well, in any case, this is not a problem for him. After these words, he accepted all the rewards, and he received a message that the black virus has changed and the additional speed of life recovery has increased exactly 3 times. And if Chen Bai connects to the program due to the black light virus, he will receive the biochemical demon skill called Cell Revival. Chen Bai discovered this skill to calculate about it, and learned that cell revival is a level A skill that allows the owner to expend a certain amount of his own physical strength at a high speed or the remaining energy to restore, for example, severed limbs. And he can independently turn this ability on and off. When Chen Bai read all this, he was glad that now he had a chance to get a new ability, and it was just level A. Smiling, he decided that now was the time to watch this terrible boss and find out his techniques, skills, and weak points. Immediately after this, the system threw out several artifacts in front of him that he had earned by passing this test. The first of them that he picked up was the sacred scroll of a level A biochemical demon. And this scroll could absorb the powers of other living beings to improve the owner, and also has the ability to stimulate growth of one's own cells to significantly increase the strength and capabilities of its owner. However, it also has a note, because excessive use can cause decay or mutation of genes, and the consequences will be unknown. And in order to use this scroll, one must first reach the 10th level. After looking at it, Chen Bai decided that it was the only A-level skill that has both risks and benefits, but he still has the black virus. Therefore, he still needs to think about using either this skill. After that, he put this scroll aside and opened the Tincture of Genes, another artifact. It was an ideal elixir, after taking which the physical form would significantly improve. However, the player can only take it once, and all his characteristics rose. After that, he took out the last artifact and, looking at it in surprise, asked himself what kind of thing this was, and began to think that perhaps it was some kind of special suit or a special attribute of someone else's skill. The system told him that this was the skin of a faceless person, and this was a specialized attribute which has excellent protection and can solve the problem of sagging skin. It also adds +10 to physique agility and defense, and on top of that it has a body-shaping effect. And long-term wearing can improve the figure, so it is great for women. And the dynamic leather allows you to change after wearing this item, color and shape of any attribute at your discretion. Chen Bai was silent for a while and said to himself that the description of this dynamic use is unambiguous, and he does not understand how changing his body or the shape of the equipment works. After that, he opened his inventory when he remembered that he had picked up a bunch of different things from the killed mobs. Looking at his inventory, he thought that all this equipment was made so that it would only make sense when worn under clothing. However, he was flipping through his inventory, he noticed that he had a D-level ability book there. After reading the description, he learned that it increases cell activity in a short period of time and increases the ability to recover, and the average recharge time is 10 hours. However, there is also a note that says that if the owner has an advanced version of the cell activation skill, then the skill book is invalid. Chen Bai thought that it's not scary because such a book can save a single life, so he will try to exchange it for something valuable in a local chat. Looking around, Chen Bai thought that it was probably time for him to leave, because as soon as the boss's body was handed over to the dungeon organizer, the mission would be completed. Remembering the god of trade, Chen Bai thought that this man probably didn't think that Chen Bai would complete this building so quickly. Chen Bai opened the system to leave this dungeon. However, he immediately thought about it because he decided that something was wrong here. After all, the god of trade is not just a traveling businessman who has nothing to do, and if he is here and directs someone here, then Chen Bai is more than sure that this is all for a reason, and he also mentioned a pleasant bonus at their last meeting, so it's possible its main purpose is to guard such a special dungeon. Looking at the stove, Chen Bai thought that the entire scene of this dungeon ended with the experience he received, so he does not think that any of the monsters will suddenly come to life. Walking around the furnace, Chen Bai began to think that perhaps he was just winding himself up, and the god of trade had nothing to do with this dungeon, and he really just needed the experience that Chen Bai could get here. But after being silent for a couple of seconds, Chen Bai decided that he was probably definitely something. I missed it. Having opened the stove, he looked into it and realized that it seemed like someone here didn't want a secret passage to be found. And it turns out that this stove has not only an external part, but also an internal part. After that, Chen Bai climbed inside and thought that at first glance there was nothing suspicious here. He crawled a little further and thought that perhaps he could find something in this pipe. He decided that if he didn't study the area, he might miss something strange. He immediately pushed off from his fulcrum and made his way into this pipe. He began to run up and think that it was incredibly long because he had already run more than 100 meters. However, when he reached the end, he discovered that he had reached a dead end. He tried to hit the walls to hear the full sound, and in surprise began to think that there might really be nothing here. However, this simply cannot be. Immediately after these thoughts, a golden face appeared in front of him, which crawled out of this wall. Chenbai immediately struck straight to the head. However, no damage occurred. And in front of our hero, a system appeared that said that it was an unknown mask, and the main cause of the problems at this plant is unknown. But it seems that someone has a face and has magical abilities. Chenbai took this mask and thought that this was surprising because the system did not warn him that there was something here, and could not determine what kind of thing it was, and it was very likely that this was an attribute and prop of the highest level, or prop associated with the power of some deity. Taking it in his hands and looking at it closer, Chen Bai thought that something told him that the god of trade was looking for it, and he needed to figure out a way to give it away. After that, Chen Bai got out of the dungeon. A girl from the medical faculty immediately ran up to him and said that it was just something because she saw him passing and immediately felt calmer in her soul. The girl wanted to say that she was starting to fall in love with him. However, Chen Bai asked her to stop and asked if she had copper coins, to which the woman replied that she probably did. But usually other students fought for her with other zombies. Chen Bai thought that this was bad because he didn't even know how many coins he had now, and even taking into account the fact that he gave his walkthrough, viewing still only cost 1 coin. Having opened his balance, he saw that he had 901 gold coins and immediately got angry and thought that this was not enough because he needed 1,000 gold coins in order to unlock access to his own warehouse. Chen Bai thought that the warehouse is protected by a system and isolated from any detection, so this is the safest way to store such a thing, it seems to him. He will have to wait some more time before completing the passage. After that, they went behind the building of the medical faculty to the warehouses, and the girl asked him if they would now go to the area that Chen Bai was talking about, to which the guy replied that it was already night and it was unsafe there now, so they needed to find accommodation for the night. The medical student smiled and said that not far from the university there are several luxury hotels with all amenities, and she was there. However, this is not the season, so there will be few people there. Moreover, they can stay on a high floor where it will be absolutely safe. Chen Bai smiled and looked at her, saying that perhaps she was right, so she should take them there. The girl immediately after that took him to a hotel not far from the university, but it was a hotel for lovers. Their room was called the Room of Temptation. When they were inside, Chen Bai changed his clothes and then saw that a girl from the medical faculty had come to him. Dressed in a skimpy nurse's uniform, he asked her why she was in this got off, to which she apologized and said that she thought that they had chosen this hotel to open a new side to each other. Chen Bai sat down on the sofa and said that everything was fine. It just seemed to him that it didn't quite suit her. The girl was embarrassed and said that in this case she would go change clothes. The next time she came out, she was wearing a police uniform and Chen Bai said that she was too cute to be your cop. So she needed to change her clothes again. The next attempt was to teach smart girls. However, Chen Bai said that the teachers did not turn him on. After that, she changed into a Japanese student and Chen Bai said that it was trivial because she was already a student, after which he asked, "Isn't there something really interesting here?" Finally, the girl changed into a cat uniform and asked how her owner felt about this. Chen Bai said that this is not bad, and it turns out that today she will be his little animal, and they spent a stormy night together, after which the girl fell asleep, and Chen Bai opened access to the warehouse for 1,000 coins. The system also said that he could choose an heir for himself, and it would be impossible to detect him with any spells, and the warehouse is only his personal and a secret space protected by the will of the system. Chen Bai got dressed and said that it was time for them to move on to the next stage of the mission. After that, he tossed the copper coin and summoned the goblin god of trade. Chen Bai stood on the street near his hotel and thought that in the past one phrase was popular, the meaning of which was that if someone wants something from the god of trade, then one emotion can become a bargaining chip for him. And also, everyone always knew that the god of trade has the right to change the reward of a mission to try to provoke emotions. And of course, it is very important that the god of trade trusts the hero and considers him a potential ally and not a competitor. While he was thinking about this, the god of trade appeared in front of him, who said that he did not expect to be called so quickly. After that, he took a few steps towards the hero and asked him if he had already completed the task and was eager to report. Chen Bai threw him some kind of package and said that, according to the mission's requirements, he must give the organ of the monster he killed as evidence. Looking down at the dried rotten meat, the god of trade said that it looks like this meat is not the first fresh. The god of trade looked down and began to tap his staff, saying that Chen Bai had definitely completed the task yesterday, so why didn't he call on God right away? Chen Bai did not answer anything. And the god of trade said that if he needs this scroll, then it must be a good helper, because the god of trade can keep it for himself. Bai said that he couldn't understand one thing. Looking at God, he said that he respected him immensely, but he did not understand why the god of trade revealed from him the true value of the dungeon he was going through. After which Bai said that only after entering this dungeon he realized that this was a high-level tank, and if he had not had such a high level, he would already be dead. The god of trade began to stomp and say that he wanted to warn about this and understands the dissatisfaction of our hero. But there is an explanation for this, because in fact this part of the body is very valuable and the god of trade simply did not want anyone else to get it. Bai will be so hard. Well, he said that he understood everything and asked what he would receive for this and the next mission. God Trade said that he first wanted to apologize for the fact that they warned the hero earlier, but here he managed to prove his strength. After that, the god of trade laughed and said that Bai could choose the reward for this mission himself, and the next mission would be the last in this dungeon. Bai immediately bowed with a smile and told God that he was very grateful to him for his generosity and understanding. After that, the god of trade snapped his fingers and said that Bai can choose any B-level attribute, but he advises choosing wisely. A store opened in front of our hero, and he saw a drawing of the sacred scroll and said that he would stop there. The god of trade said that this is a search scroll for an ancient city, which means that Bai is really smart for choosing this particular attribute. After this, the god of trade looked at his ward and said that the last stage of this mission awaited him ahead. Immediately after this, a notification appeared in front of him that the god of trade provides access to the highest rank quest called Simple Investments, for completing which Bai will be able to receive a scroll of the second profession. However, looking at the complexity of the task, Bai said that it was simply too difficult. He tensed up a little and said that the god of trade should himself understand that even gods are not born with SSS-level abilities. The god of trade said that of course he understands that the first task was rank A, but Bai wants his best goods, so he must deserve it. Otherwise, the god of trade will be very upset. Bai spread his arms and said that he would do as he asked. Meanwhile, a monster appeared in the area where our hero's hideout was located. It was a level 5 mutated rat. Sun and the guard looked at her and said that these creatures are growing by leaps and bounds, and the guy who was just eaten by this rat was unlucky enough to come face to face with her. Sun said that he has the 5th level, and his attributes are better than theirs in everything, to which the security guard replied that their team is not able to cope with him and they are now trapped, so they need to decide what to do. Sun began to explain to the survivors that now they cannot resist this rat. But this does not mean that everything is lost. After all, the main thing is to keep an eye on it. However, immediately after this, the rat discovered them, and the guard saved her mistress by throwing her away from the rat. The guard looked at her mistress and said that she had to urgently leave here, to which the girl replied that it was too late to run, if the speed of this rat was simply incredible. As soon as she said this, the rat looked at them with crazy eyes, but Bai suddenly appeared and stamped her into the ground with one kick. Looking at his servants, he said that it seemed he had arrived just in time. He also said that he was calling on people to leave the site of this battle, and those who died in the mission can count on full compensation for the damage caused. After that, they returned home, and Song, sitting near the owner, said that after they destroyed all the zombies in the area, mutant rats suddenly appeared, to which Bai noted that they were first seen in the east of this area. The journalist came up and apologized to the master and said that these animals destroyed 6 of their warehouses, and the total number of victims exceeded 100. She gave him a list of victims, and Bai said that she did a great job, and it looks like they haven't rested for a long time, so he thinks it's time for them to take a break. After which he added that he will finish off the remaining rats in the area and asks them to find out where they started to climb. Sun looked at her owner and thanked him for such care, and also added that it would be nice if they still went to rest because she felt better when the owner was next to her. And she also wanted to introduce him to someone. Bai said that he didn't mind, and Song went to the door, opened it, and said that in front of them was Qin Ling Yu. They saved this woman when clearing the area, and they knew each other since university, and she studied law and worked as a lawyer, so she can help with the registration new rules. And on top of that, she doesn't mind getting to know the owner better. Bai said that in this case everyone can leave and the girl will have to stay with him. Left alone, Bai stood up and the girl, a little embarrassed, said that if he needed anything he should not be shy and immediately ask her. Bai took her chin and said that he heard that for her profession she is very sharp-tongued, and he would like to see this personally. The woman smiled sweetly and said that she would fulfill any wish of the master. After a while, Chen Bai put on his pants, and the lawyer wiped her mouth and thanked the owner for the reward. To which Chen Bai said that she has excellent skills and he is quite pleased. After that, he went to the window and called her closer to him. Chen Bai said that it was time for them to talk about her future work. However, he noticed that the lawyer stood doggy-style in front of him and said that she wanted more. Chen Bai looked at her and asked what kind of position this was, and didn't she really hear what he just told her? The woman blushed and said that she didn't hear him, and it seemed like it was time for her to activate her level B ability called concentration, because this ability allows her to increase the speed of thinking and sensory sensitivity when she concentrates on her own thoughts and feelings. But during the duration of its action, she cannot perceive the world around you and even see and hear people. Chenbai told her to just get up and look out the window, because from here you can see all three districts. Chenbai called them by name and said that he needed her to establish a single rule for the areas he had just named. The lawyer said that she could do this and asked if there were any special requirements, to which he replied that he wanted to know more about her abilities. Approaching her nearby, he suggested that she try to concentrate on her feelings and asked how much she could increase her sensitivity. The girl used her skill and said that now they can check it. And it was the best night of her life. The next day, Chen Bai and his servants arrived in the sewers of this area at the northern drain. He said that yesterday, while studying the city using old drawings, he found this place and there were definitely monsters here. And most likely there was a lair of mutant rats inside. Looking inside, Chen Bai said that even though he himself can get there and decide everything, this place can still help him cultivate courage in his team because he needs strong men to protect others when he is not around. And that is why he chose them and brought them here to complete the mission. After that, he looked at them and said that only the strongest could protect the people of their area. Everyone immediately fell to their knees in front of him and said that they were ready to do anything for their master. Chen Bai said that it was time for them to go because reconnaissance showed that everything here is not so simple and from now on they can call him Captain. The squad members immediately rejoiced and called him Captain out loud. After that, Chen Bai walked to the entrance and destroyed it with one blow. A notification appeared in front of him that he was starting a special mission called the Master of the Sewer. Looking at the others, he asked if they also had such a mission, to which he was told that everyone had it. The guard said that such a mission requires killing all the rats from the mutants and the Rat King, and they also need to find the source of the mutation of the rats, and the rewards will depend on the completion of the mission. Upon entering, Chen Bai said that it was much cleaner here than he had thought before, and Song added that it was very dark here and it was very good that they were able to light the torches. Approaching one turn, Chen Bai stopped everyone and said that they should be careful because something was approaching them. Immediately after this, they saw huge mutant rats rushing towards them at full speed. Chen Bai immediately used his skills and said that there was a crowd of them here. After that, together with his squad, he entered the battle and shouted to them to be careful because the rats are very fast, and it is imperative to finish off those who are still moving. One of the guys said that he has equipment for processing rat skins. Sun approached the owner who was resting and said that it looks like this area has already been cleared, and they have cleared a total of 16 long and short paths and must have almost reached the end. One of the guys said that there was another rat in the distance, and Sun said with a smile that she could handle it herself. Chen Bai looked at this and reminded her to remember to use the intelligence skill. However, when she used it, she was horrified and said that there was a boss there and he was level 7. Chen Bai immediately rose to his feet and attacked this huge rat, after which he finished her off with one blow. The system immediately gave him a reward in the form of plague boots, which give an increase in agility +5, protection from the poisonous effects of magic, as well as several more characteristics if you collect the entire set. Looking at his squad, he said that so that they don't fall for the artifacts, they can always become a powerful weapon in the right hands. After that, he put on his plague boots and said that although the level of the attribute is low, it is several times stronger than ordinary equipment of the same level. Having risen, he said that the king had already been defeated. Therefore, they only had to find out the reason for the mutation of the rats. They continued to walk further, and someone said that everything would turn out strange because they stopped meeting rats. Chen Bai noticed something and ordered everyone to stop. And he himself began to enter the poisonous fog, and the system kept telling him that he received virus points for absorbing the vapor of the plague virus. Chen Bai looked around and thought that absorbing viruses and some microbes in the sewer is normal. However, the viruses absorbed now were the first that he felt after the start of Judgment Day. And moreover, the type and amount of this poison can harm even mutants. Looking into the distance, Chen Bai decided that a similar source of mutation was just around the corner. Chen Bai said that he would have to go on alone, and she needed to gather a squad and urgently leave here. The squad immediately left, and Chen Bai continued to move forward with the thought that he was very interested because with every step the points for absorbing viruses only grow and grow. After a few more minutes, he enthusiastically said that he had finally arrived where he wanted. Chen Bai said with a smile that this place is just a paradise for him because here, he constantly increases his virus points, and in the center of the room there is a source of infection. Coming closer to him, he said with a smile that, in his opinion, it all started with this corpse. He saw that there was some kind of scroll in the corpse's hand and decided to take it to check the information in it. However, as soon as he opened it, he noticed that there were no attributes or instructions. It was simply written there that the priest sacrificed his life to leave them this blessing, and their great god lit his own fire on this test and ascended to the highest level, so they sacrificed the world only to call on God on the test field, after which they will turn into gods and their spirits will live forever, and their names will be known to everyone in this dirty land. Chen Bai finished reading this and saw that here is the signature of a plague cult that he had never heard of in his past life. Rolling up this scroll, Chen Bai thought that if he stroked all these powers, it would increase by several levels at once. However, unexpectedly, his ability activated on its own, and in surprise, he even dropped the scroll. After that, he involuntarily began to absorb all the viruses around him, and the system told him that a special mission called the Sewer Master was completed, and the owner received 2,000 experience and also won random rewards. Also now, our hero had a mark of plague on him, which was an identification mark of members of the plague cult, and was capable of burning the skin or changing its color if new epidemics were coming to the world, or if there was a person with such a note near the owner. After this, the system notified its owner that he was now saturated with plague and received the plague seal, thereby fulfilling the conditions for launching subsequent tasks. So now, he was given a building called the Plague Cult with the highest level of difficulty. Having opened the system, he read that in order to get the true god of this world, the Plague Cult sacrificed the kingdom of the ancient god to bring countless treasures to this world. And the owner of the Plague Seal has the right to become a true god, as in the prophecy, and find the rest of the sect members. And the task is that he must go through trials and find out who is the true god of these prophecies. Chen Bai realized that this task was connected with divine power, and thought that if he was the god of the plague, he would have to fight with the carrier of the plague or something. But there was nothing wrong with that because he could find him without any problems and defeat them like all of them whose gods he hates. After he accepted this task, a purple portal appeared in front of him. Chen Bai used analysis and found out that this is a portal to a hellish dungeon called the Plague Sewer, and exactly 1 month is given to complete it. He realized that his level is even more difficult than the nightmare level in the medical faculty. Sun also felt something, and the entrance to the dungeon appeared in front of her. She analyzed it and said that the dungeon had just been created and it had an average difficulty, and the recommended levels for entry were from 1 to 10, and the total entry limit was up to 3 once a day. Chen Bai appeared behind him and said that levels 1 to 10 could motivate many to complete this dungeon. Sun was glad that the owner returned and said that she had just distributed the participants into teams to slightly increase the level of this dungeon, and this chance should not be missed. 20 minutes later, when the preparations were over, Chen Bai explained that the space of this dungeon is not simple. Therefore, it is better to enter in groups of 4 or 8 people, and they should also remember that their lives come first and promotion comes second. Looking at his servants, he said that he thinks that they also need to unite in a group and remember that in a real battle there will be no one to rely on, and that is why he will not help them if this is not required. The women immediately said that they understood him and did not ask for help. Chen Bai said that they should first form a team and then join his group. After Chen Bai accepted them into the group, Song was surprised to notice that he was signed as the #1 commander. Chen Bai spread his arms and said that the number at the beginning is just the order in which players become commanders. So you shouldn't be so surprised. The youngest son looked at the owner and asked why she didn't receive an invitation to the group. To which he briefly replied that it was because he didn't invite her, because this is his team, and only loyal and capable people can join it. And the little girl who is deathly afraid of zombies he not going to invite. The girl asked how he could be so arrogant because she had already made her choice. After that, Chen Bai opened his inventory and said that in this case, she can choose equipment and enter the dungeon because he wants to see her fighting skills in person. After that, she did everything, and they entered the dungeon. The girl took the blade in her hands and Chen Bai reminded her that he was not going to help her. After that, he looked at the journalist and said that he didn't remember what abilities she had. because she didn't even tell him about it. The girl immediately created an illusion and said that her talent is a level B illusory image, and she can create phantoms because of her imagination. But in battle, her ability is practically useless due to her slowness. After that, the girl looked at the younger son and said that her talent is called C-level genius, which increases her level and skill by 50%. Looking at this, Chen Bai said that even journalist phantoms would be more useful than this skill. A few minutes passed and the youngest son said that she had just killed all the rats single-handedly, and by the way, they are much stronger than those zombies. Chen Bai said that this is quite good, and seeing how hard she works to become a member of his team, he will make an exception and take her too. The girl pulled and said that she didn't really need it, after which Chen Bai said that he respects her choice and therefore will not send her an invitation. The girl was offended and said that he was now losing not only a beautiful girl but also a talented fighter, to which Chen Bai said that in fact she is the most arrogant here. Mom's son walked up to her daughter and patted her on the head, saying that Mr. Ya was just teasing. But she really wanted to be on his team, and all morning she was angry with her mother because she introduced her to a lawyer instead of hers. Daughters. Chen Bai looked at the girl and said that for the sake of her mother, he would send her an invitation. After this, the girl immediately accepted this invitation and became a member of their team. She immediately became inspired and headed forward with the words that she would kill all the monsters, to which Chen Bai said that she was very young but already glib with her tongue. And her mom replied that she was the most annoying interlocutor she had encountered. However, the owner need not worry and just need wait for the dungeon to complete and return to your home. After these words, the mother said that she promises her master that she will make this girl call him daddy. And Chen Bai noticed that her daughter is somewhat similar to her. The woman said that her daughter is as determined as her mother, and the world has changed, and a young girl like her who has never experienced difficulty will be forced to call this man daddy. And all you need to do is just teach one lesson. Meanwhile, a woman with white hair was in the bathroom of a luxurious hotel room and talked about how comfort during the end of the world is only possible thanks to their leader. A notification appeared in front of her that Chen Bai, together with his team, had for the first time completed a regular level dungeon called District Sewerage, and also published a video about clearing the dungeon, and the viewing price was 10 coins. The girl immediately turned on this video with the thought that she had to watch the recording. However, she thought that because of the price, she would soon go completely bankrupt. Looking at this recording, she wondered who all these girls were. Another pioneer sat on the bench and thought that they were talented, but they were of little use in a real battle now. Another guy thought that this dungeon had an unusually high level, and even under his leadership it would be difficult to win. Another group of people watched this video and argued over what rank this hero had, and reasoned that Tom with his S rank was probably stronger than this guy. However, Tom said that this is not so because this guy killed the boss in a matter of seconds and he is definitely stronger. Another girl watched this fight and was surprised at how Chen Bai easily killed after the 10th level. She began to touch herself with mice that she too would like to be in the leader's group. The next day, Sun came to her master and said that after clearing the sewers, they received a lot of low-level equipment, so they should all restore the basic standards for buying and selling these items as quickly as possible. Chen Bai also said that he has something else for her, and these items are very important. The woman looked at them in surprise. Taking the wall of flesh, she was surprised that this is a special object for building walls that can grow, and its strength indicators are simply off the charts. He definitely won't be able to get through this wall on the island. There was also another artifact that, if read, could return to the selected city, and the effect depends on the level of the list. The woman immediately said that she couldn't even imagine how many lives this item would save. After that, the woman took the skin of the monster and found out that it improves the body by adapting to any shape. Chen Bai asked, "Did I like this item more than the previous ones?" To which the woman replied that he is her master, she likes everything that he likes. Chen Bai said that he is not very knowledgeable about factory clothes. Therefore, he wonders if she will be able to surprise him, after which the woman hugged him and said that she was very sorry, but it would not be her anymore. However, she wants her daughter to officially meet her daddy, and for this she will need to be dressed, so Chen Bai can wait a little. That same evening, Chen Bai had a pleasant time with all these girls. After that, he put on the plague equipment and collected the best thing from this set. He thought that after stealing the sewer 3 times, he only got one thing from someone else's set. So even if he receives one thing per visit, he will be able to collect the entire set in just 3 days. After that, he wanted to go outside. However, he noticed that he had received a system notification in which a member of Group 01, under the name Meng Meng, wanted to invite him to a private chat. Bai accepted this invitation and immediately received a message from her, and she greeted him and said that she watched his cleaning video and realized that he could give advice to each member of the group based on their abilities. So we would also like to get some advice from him. He immediately replied that in order to give any advice, he needed to know what she could do, and if she trusted him, she should tell him about her abilities. However, if she does not want to reveal them, then she can simply name her attributes, but this will be more difficult. The girl said that now everything will be sent to him in one message, and Bai began to think that in his past life he had never heard of this name at all. And their group cannot contain people with weak abilities. After that, he learned her characteristics. And he was surprised because she had an SSS level like him. And her ability was infinite growth, but this ability cannot be borrowed, and it turns out that this is not the first time she is reborn. Bai wrote to her and said that such abilities are very complex, so she should talk about her skills. She immediately began to write about the fact that she has a skill called a dream butterfly, which is able to penetrate into the world of dreams similar to the real world, and the dreams of other people can also penetrate there, and she can also take things out of these dreams, and she also has dream weaving, and the ability allows you to change some details in the dream world. But now she can only change something minor, and she can also invite someone into her dream by creating a dream totem. Having heard about all this, Bai realized that in order to not get to her, you just need to preserve her body, and such an ability is almost invincible. Meanwhile, the woman said that she could send him her totem and invite him to her dream to meet. Bai immediately replied that he was not going to agree to this because he feared for his life. However, the girl immediately said that he did not need to refuse because she could sign the contract so as not to harm him. Bai said that he was surprised that she knew about the contract of the universe that cannot be broken, but also added that it costs 10 coins. And if she has that much, why ask the Soviets? To which she replied that monsters killed in a dream also die in reality, and she earned these coins herself and is ready for anything if only the leaders teach her. And it can also be proven, so it seemed that she has mental perception, and this is an excellent book, and she showed a few more of her relics. Bai looked at all this and thought that she had a powerful ability and was definitely no worse than him. Meanwhile, the girl tensed up and said that she had a premonition that if she did not improve her abilities, she would die sooner or later. Bai thought that she was right because her ability has nothing to do with the level of the owner's body. And although this is the only one, it is still a key drawback. After this, Bai said that in this case she can send him the signed contract, with the thought that even if she is ready to accept such a contract, then so be it. He will help her with it. However, he cannot allow someone else to take such a contract. Powerful ability right under his nose. A couple of minutes later, he received a contract in which it was written that she promises not to cause him direct or indirect harm, and violation of the contract will lead to the loss of all abilities, and the contract is valid for 24 hours. Entering the second bedroom, he thought that this woman's totem required him to relax for 3 minutes, because otherwise its movement would take even longer. Bai looked at the ceiling and thought that if her ability improved to the extent that it would be possible to influence reality from a dream, then she would become simply invincible. With such thoughts, he closed his eyes, and when he opened them, he was already in the room next to this girl. She greeted him and smiled warmly, if she said that her name was Meng, and it was with her that he had been talking all this time. Looking around, Bai said his name and said that her dream did not look much like a place for combat training. The girl said with a smile that this was just her room, and then opened a portal and showed that there was a gym not far from here. Looking outside, he saw how huge her dream was. Having passed through the portal, he asked, "Is the world really only big during her shift?" To which the girl replied that this is not her world, and it exists separately, and she can only enter it and change it a little. And according to her research, this dream world reflects the real world. Bai spread his hands and said that they should go and start training as soon as possible because he did not want to waste his precious time. After that, she created French emotions and they headed to the gym together. Clicking her fingers, the girl turned on the light there. Bai looked at her and asked if she really had 8th grader syndrome, to which she laughed and said that before the end of the world she was a writer. Bai sat down in the stands and said that if she wanted to improve her effectiveness in combat in the real world, then the best way to do this would be sparring. Assessing her with his eyes, he ordered her not to use any abilities because he needed to evaluate her skills first. The girl took a fighting stance and said that in the dream world, her attributes were increased to the same level as her mental abilities. So now, she is at the 48th level. So Bai must be more careful if he wants to engage in battle with her. Bai began to get up, saying that she was worrying in vain and could fight at full strength. Immediately after this, the girl warned that she was attacking and threw her hand at him. However, he easily dodged and she fell to the side. Looking at her, he said that her center of gravity was too unstable, so she fell. The girl got angry and started waving her arms in the hope of catching him. Looking at this, Chen-bai asked, "Is she really boxing like a 5-year-old child?" After that, he dodged again and she fell again. And he said that firstly, she must control the values and her attacks are weak, so she is not even able to stand on her feet. Next to them, he added one more time that secondly, you should not just try to get into the enemy's weakly protected places. After that, Rarely ran up to her and said that she should watch the enemy. They should only be focused on the attack. Immediately after that, he stopped her fist with his hand and said that she should remember for now these 3 rules that he had just said. He also added that the speed he is currently using is comparable to the speed of an attribute around the 20th level. Therefore, she should work on her reaction. The girl changed and said that she understood everything, and he looked at her and asked why these changes, because she could just become better. After which the girl blushed a little and said with a smile that she would definitely try. After this, Chen-bai woke up and found himself at home. Mrs. Song immediately approached him and said that the rules and laws of this area had already been published, and that each of the boards in the rules was tied to a wire that could, if anything, explain them. After hearing this, Chen-bai drowned and said that now there is probably no way. Looking out the window, he added that over the past few days he had cleared the area around this area, and early tomorrow morning he had to go somewhere like this, so he left the leadership in this house to the woman. Sun asked why so quickly, because she thought that it would be only in a few days. But she immediately calmed down and said that in the end, there was one more thing missing from his plague kit. Looking at his inventory, Chen-bai said that he had spent too much time putting together this poor low-grade set, and there were many treasures more valuable than this suit, so he needed to finish it all quickly. Song hugged him from behind and said that he could come back when he remembered them, and also added that otherwise there might be a flood in this palace. Chen-bai smiled and asked, "Are there still floods in his territory?" Taking her by the face, he asked to call everyone and said that they should develop a plan in case of an unforeseen situation, after which she exhaled heavily and said that she would fulfill any request of her master. That same night, he again launched into a storm of lust and passion with all his women. After that, he went out into the corridor and saw a guard there, who immediately told him that she was looking for him. Looking at the girl, Chen-bai asked what happened. The guard immediately reported that someone was causing disturbances in the settlement at the foot of the mountain. Chen-bai looked into the distance and said that he had nothing to do with it, because the laws had already been established, and there were people who should follow them. After that, he looked into her closed eyes and asked, "Doesn't she know what to do with the rebels?" The security guard apologized and said that they now have everything under control. So she wanted to notify the owner that many of them consider the team leader to be their classmates, so they want help from him. After these words, Chen-bai turned around and said that she should take him to this place. Arriving at the right place, they saw a small group of people surrounded by new police. One of the guys shouted that Chen-bai had finally arrived. The guard began to explain that these people were not satisfied with the tax of 1 coin per day, and they also wanted to receive protection, although they refused to pay. One of the guys recognized our hero and started shouting that they studied together. Chen-bai began to come down and say that he remembers him. After that, he stood in front of a crowd of people and stated that their laws are not so harsh because by killing just one zombie, they can already get a coin. And even with the condition that they cannot kill the unfortunate zombie, there are many other simpler and safer ones in the camp work, so they understand why they are creating unnecessary problems. The guy who started the riot began to say that it's not about money, and Chen-bai must understand that since the end of the world has come, people should help each other and he has all the resources. So why can't he just distribute them to those in need from the camp? After that, the unknown person looked at the rest of the crowd and said that if he were by, he would listen to the president's words to the council court, and then everyone started yelling that if he abolishes this tax, life will become much easier for everyone. Chen-bai looked down and said that he had no desire to talk to these people. After that, he raised his hand up and stated that the rules have already been set, so if they don't want to follow them, then they can just leave, and if they don't disperse in 3 minutes, they will be killed. Looking at the guard, he ordered her to start the report for 3 minutes. The main instigator of the riot said that 3 minutes would not be needed because he was not going to go anywhere anyway and was seeking well-being for everyone, and they would definitely support him, and everyone would be grateful. One of the guards asked them to stop arguing because 1 coin is not a burden to anyone, and those who do not want to pay are just stingy little people, so they are not going to protect such people. The rest of the guards also began to laugh and say that these scum cannot kill even 1 zombie a day, and if they cannot kill them, then they can come to the guards and be their watchdogs, and he will pay 2 whole coins to those who will do such services. After this, the main rebel said that in this case, he was not going to stay in such a place after such insults. Looking at our hero, he said that Chen Bai would still regret being kicked out of here. Immediately after this, Chen Bai slowly approached him and asked him to stop. The guy laughed and asked if Chen Bai already regrets this. However, Chen Bai used his claws instead and stabbed him straight in the stomach. After that, the guy fell, and Chen Bai said that if one particular trash runs away right now, that he will really regret it. After that, the guard looked at the rest of the people and said that there was still a minute left, so she didn't understand why they hadn't left yet. One of the men immediately fell to his knees and said that he was ready to follow the rules and was also ready to accept punishment for the problems caused. But I already have one more chance for him. Chen Bai said that he is very glad that there are smart people here. After that, everyone else fell to their knees again and said that they also wanted to get another chance. Chen Bai didn't even look at them and ordered the guard to deal with everyone, to which she replied that she understood everything, and Chen Bai needn't worry because she would arrange everything in the best possible way. After that, Chen Bai headed back to his room and noticed that he had received a message from the Dream Lapta girl. It was written there that in the real world, it is very difficult to improve her abilities. Although her intelligence indicators are very high, she still does not have attack skills. To which he replied that she should be patient and take her time, and he will help her find books with attack skills. After this, the girl said that it would be better if they were together. To which he replied that if she was ready to follow him, then he could pick her up. The girl was happy and gave him her coordinates. He found out that she lived in a neighboring city and thought that once in this city in his past life, he was there on a high task. It was certainly not too difficult, but it would still be possible to get high-quality materials there. Looking up, he decided to go to this city first. Meanwhile, in this city where Chen Bai went, there was a group of students who were discussing how much food they had left and complaining that there were a lot of them here, so they could only last 3 more days with this food. One of the guys got angry and hit the wall with the words that he was sure that this was all because of just one zombie who had already killed 5 of their people, locked up, and his instincts are incredibly sharp, so they can only go down to the 10th floor and then he replaces them. And because of this, they are imprisoned in front of this zombie. The bespectacled guy said that they might die here. However, girls suddenly appeared from behind them and said that someone seemed to be coming to the hotel. Having looked, they saw that there was Chen Bai jumping on the roofs. They did not know him and thought that perhaps this was a new type of zombie. One of the guys said that this guy walks and flies on the walls, so it's too dangerous to stand here like that in front of the window. They'd better close the curtains. To which the girl replied that he's too worried and she thinks that he's an ordinary person. People immediately began to say that this was simply impossible and she was mistaken. However, the girl confidently looked at her friends and said that her abilities allow her to know who he is. After that, she looked at him again and said that he was starting to approach them. A huge zombie also noticed our hero. Looking down, Chen Bai was happy because he did not expect such a bonus. After all, he just has a blueprint for the weapon from this zombie. Looking down, he began to think that if he hit this monster with his giant hammer, it would affect the quality of the material. Therefore, it was better to behead him. Immediately after that, he jumped straight on this zombie, and the others stood at the window and did not understand what was happening. The girl replied that they were starting to fight. This man had claws, to which she was immediately told that this meant that he was definitely a monster. However, after a couple of seconds, the girl said in a trembling voice that the unknown person had killed the monster and seemed to be absorbing it. After that, she used her skill even more and said that she seemed to be able to discern his face, while Chen Bai received a notification that he had just killed the zombie despot. Because of this, he received a bunch of rewards and also improved the abilities of his virus. Also now he has another skill, and the Blacklight virus gives him a new form of muscle strengthening and a shield. Chen Bai looked at his hands and thought that strengthening his muscles could strengthen any part of his body. However, it would affect the shape of the body and cause inconvenience. But the shield is a useful skill because it is twice as strong as his defense. Meanwhile, the girl above found out who Chen Bai was and began shouting his name, after which he looked up and asked her in surprise, "Who is she?" One of the guys immediately covered her mouth and removed her from the window with the words that perhaps this is not the same Chen Bai that they all know, and perhaps this is a disguised monster because he easily killed that huge monster because of which they are stuck here, so if he hears them, they will definitely die by his hand. Chen Bai, meanwhile, jumped up to them, and stopping near the window, he asked if there was anyone inside because he heard that someone had just called him. The girl immediately threw away the guy who was holding her mouth and rushed to our hero. After that, she opened the door, and Chen Bai said that he recognized her and saw her once with Miss Song. The girls asked how her friend was doing. After that, they all went downstairs to the cafe to eat while Chen Bai talked about how about 100 people now live in the settlement that he founded in the villa area, and Mrs. Song helps him in management, so everything is fine with her. The others looked at him in surprise and did not understand how he could talk about the fact that there were more than 100 people in his settlement, and how the queen of the city could help him. Chen Bai crossed his legs and said that they can find out about this and see for themselves if they come there themselves, because he would never deceive if the lie could be easily seen through. Immediately after this, several more people came into the cafe and said that they came here as soon as they heard that Chen Bai was here. Chen Bai recognized these people and asked where they came from here. The guys began to tell that on that day they went to help one woman, and many students went together. Looking at his former classmates, the guy said that there were somehow a lot of his students here, and if they wanted, they could all go to the villa area in which he founded a settlement. However, after that he stopped, and immediately stated that there were rules in the settlement, 1 coin per day, and he didn't know if they could accept it. One of the guys immediately said that of course they could get that price. After all, if it weren't for that monster, they would have already received gold coins. But they immediately said that the road to the settlement is very dangerous, so they asked him to go with them. Chen Bai said that he still had things to do, so unfortunately he would not go with them, but he asked them not to worry because while he was coming here, he only saw one monster. After that, Chen Bai opened his inventory and said that he had equipment that he could not use, so he left it for them to get there safely. After that, Chen Bai said that he was still in a hurry, so if he didn't know where to go, he would already be leaving. They all said goodbye together and Chen Bai left the room. After that, he continued on his way, when suddenly the girl from the dreams sent him a request for a private chat. He opened this notification and saw that she was writing that King Han in the group was complaining. So she thought that her ability could help him. Chen Bai stopped and asked her to briefly tell what was happening. Meanwhile, the guys who stayed at the hotel began to think about how they could get to the settlement. They discussed the fact that it was safe and there were a lot of people there. And for them, this was very important because they first needed to prepare because they needed to cross the entire city to get to this place. One of the guys adjusted his glasses and said that he had a couple of ideas. However, no, Chen Bai returned forever, who climbed through the window. His acquaintances immediately approached him and asked what happened, to which he replied that he temporarily needed a room to do something. The others came up to him and said that he could use their room. He hugged them and said that he was grateful. However, he immediately added that he needed to be alone in it, to which they laughed and said that while he was in the room, they would spend the night in the living room. As I watched the second one with all this, I suddenly remembered something and asked our hero to stop and listen to her. She approached him and said that she would like to add Ms. Song as a friend, so she wanted to know her number, after which Chen Bai quickly rattled off her number. The rest of the guys said that they would also like to add our hero to their chats and asked for his number. Looking at them, he briefly replied that the first number belonged to him. One of the guys started laughing and saying that this was a strange joke. But the second one had already added our hero as a friend and said that as soon as everyone else added him, they would be convinced that this was not a joke. After that, the guy opened the system and added our hero to his friends, and with an incredibly surprised face said that he really had number 1. They looked up and began to think that this was simply incredible because he belonged to the first number, which means that the order of becoming awakened coincides with the numbers, and it turns out that this man was the first to awaken. After that, they discussed it so much that once he wrote in the dorm chat that the university had postponed the physical fitness test to mid-June. The second guy said that of course he remembers it. After all, they trained for more than a week and nothing happened in the end. But immediately after that, he jumped up and said that perhaps this guy knew about the end of the world even before it began. One of the men said that maybe it was just a coincidence, but in the end, because he told everyone to practice, these exercises ended up helping a lot during battles with monsters. The guys calmed down and said that this was probably true, and he knew about everything long before all this. After that, one of the friends looked at the girl who was sitting and asked why she was so red. She immediately stood up and said that nothing had happened. She needed to go to the room, and also reminded them of what Chen Bai asked them to do, meaning that they were not allowed to enter the room. While I was walking along the corridor, she heard that some of her friends were saying that Chen Bai was definitely deceiving them because there were too many holes in his words. And these words that the queen of the city helps him in management sound like ordinary boasting. Meanwhile, Chen Bai finally shut up and, once in the dream world, greeted people by saying that he was doing something in the real world. So he was a little late, and it seems that everyone here was only waiting for him, so he apologizes. Looking at the room, he saw that there were 3 people sitting there. The first to rise was a guy in a tracksuit who said that his name was Han, nicknamed the King. He greeted our hero and said that he was very glad that he was finally able to meet him. Dreamcatcher said that the guy was just starting to suck up, to which he began to say that these were just ordinary facts. The second masked man said that his name is Crow, and his ability is the embodiment of fear, and he only came here because he needed another person. Hearing about these abilities, the king said that his mental control was the weakest here. Chenbai said that he was very lucky because the Dreamcatcher only recently learned that in order to give the opportunity to come to another person in a dream, a totem is needed. Hearing this, the guy laughed and said that he was very lucky. After that, Chenbai extended his hand and said that Dreamcatcher would not be able to keep them all together in one dream for so long, so he should explain what his complaint was. The guy said that this is all because of his exclusive mission and he will send them a screenshot, because it's quite far away, so it would be better for them to talk on the way. Right after that, they didn't go. And Chen Bai read about his exclusive mission and found out that among his father's things, this guy found a medical record of a psychiatric hospital called Red Star. But it was written with the name of an aunt whom he had never heard of, and her medical history seemed very strange to him because the symptoms manifested themselves somehow too badly and no one ever told him about it. So it's possible that his high-level mental control is associated with genetic diseases, and the key to solving this mystery lies in a psychiatric hospital. A couple of minutes later, they found themselves near the hospital, and the guy said that when he found her, she was already part of the mission. After this, the king said that he went there once but quickly returned. After that, he folded his hands on his chest and said that he could not defeat level 12 monsters alone, and there was also no way to wait for the renovation of this labyrinth. Wu Shenbai touched this portal to the dungeon, and the system asked him does he really want to lead a team in a psychiatric hospital called Red Star, to which Chen Bai briefly replied that he was going to do so. After that, they entered this portal and found themselves inside the hospital. Looking around, the raven said that there was one monster here, and the girl replied that something was clearly wrong here, to which the king replied that the monsters here are not weak, so they should be more careful. Meanwhile, a zombie nurse appeared in front of them, holding a syringe in her hands, and began to slowly approach them. Raven stood up to her and said that he would now try to defeat her. Immediately after that, he spread his arms and used his ability called Embodiment of Fear, which caused the zombie to immediately stop. After that, she fell to the ground and her heart beat at an incredible speed. Raven snapped his fingers, and the stress of this zombie was so strong that her heart could not stand it and exploded. And the group received a notification that their group member killed the mad nurse, so they all gain experience. Chen Bai said that this is quite a good ability, and everyone else also confirmed this. Chen Bai picked up the card that fell from this boss and gave it to the crow, who said that they were lucky, and this was an attacking skill. Chen Bai said that the king himself should decide who to give this skill to because he always called them. To which he replied that he only needs mission items and besides, he already has similar skills. Immediately after this, Dreamcatcher came up and took this skill, saying that in this case she would get it. Holding him close to her, she taught this skill and now possessed a skill called Screams and Howls. Chen Bai approached her and said that she should try to use it, to which she replied that the attack range is not very long. But then I am wide, so this skill can lure monsters out of the chambers. Chen Bai said that now they need the function of this skill to attract monsters because it will take too long to kill them one by one, and also asked her not to be afraid because there will be no problems because he is nearby. After this, the girl used her new skill for the first time in her life. Her voice echoed throughout the area and zombies began to flock to it. After looking at all this, Chen Bai said that this skill has a good effect. The rest of the group immediately tensed up and said that there were too many monsters so they needed to be careful. The base catcher looked at the hero and asked if it was normal that there were so many of them, to which Chen Bai replied that this is of course normal. After all, this is what they came here for. After that, he stretched his and said that these monsters are just an excuse for them to practice their new skills. The king called his knees and said that if he says so, then everything will be fine, so they should rush into battle. After that, he immediately killed several zombies with one blow. Raven also used his skills to kill them, and she got the dream catcher by the sound of a shot. The king looked at this and said that he was surprised that she had grenade launchers. I realized that in a dream, she really can create whatever she wants, and perhaps in the future she will be able to create some kind of mega-large robot. After that, they looked at their leader and wondered why he had not done anything yet. Chen Bai, meanwhile, stood in one position, and finally breathed out a sigh of relief with the thought that he was finally able to charge his skill, and immediately began to think that the charging speed of this skill was too slow, and it seemed that during the battle they would be very difficult to use. After that, He swung his arms and hit the ground with all his might, and hundreds of huge earth spikes emerged from the earth, which instantly killed most of the zombies. Looking at his team, the man said that he left 2 zombies on purpose. He used absorption because now he knew how to look at the memories of those he absorbs. And he also thought at that moment that he had never used this skill before. Closing his eyes closed, he began to see strange pictures, cut-up girls and rituals. He could not understand that the band took place in this hospital because it was more like a horror film. During these memories, he found himself in the body of the head nurse. An unknown man stood in front of her and said that she should calm down. After that, he came closer to her and stroked her head with the words that she was scared to death and therefore does not value her mental stability at all, because now she will need to devote her whole life to her owner, and it will be a huge pity for him. Having a crazy woman after all, it can only be used as a sacrifice. Hearing a few familiar words, Chen Bai finally remembered. In a past life, when he was a demon hunter, the psychiatric hospital in this city was connected with them, and perhaps they even called them into this world. But his level at that time was already higher than acceptable. Therefore, he simply read an article on the forum and forgot about it. Looking at his team, he said that it was time for them to start looking for clues for the king's mission. But they should not forget to be careful because most likely here they will meet a lot of quite strong monsters. Half an hour passed as they walked around this hospital, and the king said that they had lured all the monsters out of this building, so there was definitely no one left inside. After all, they had already searched 3 floors and they still didn't have anything. Only the Raven noticed something and said that the number 16 occurs somehow too often in this hospital. After this, the Raven looked at our hero and asked why the dungeon was not doing anything. Was it really scared of the group leader and decided not to appear? Immediately from the depths of the corridor, they heard that the Raven was too arrogant. The entire team immediately used their abilities and shouted for the boss to show up. A couple of seconds later, the Red Star Hospital director's monster appeared in front of them. He introduced himself as the director and said that he was one of the 72 Pillars of Solomon and also the messenger of the 16th Supreme Demon. He began to slowly approach the group of people and say that there was no point in pretending to be calm, because by the way, the sacrifice of their master is their best fate. And if the girl agrees to serve him faithfully and produce offspring from him, then he can even spare her. However, the rest cannot count on this. The catcher again immediately shouted that this would never happen in his life. And if he wants children, he must go and give birth to them himself. Chen Bai smiled and said that in front of him he sees only a lower demon who used to be a man, and now, for some unknown reason, is too arrogant. After that, Chen Bai used his claws and said that the director must prove that he is capable of something, because now he is just standing there and making a mockery of himself in front of them.